Welcome to the Romance Fiction Club, where different romance authors come together to share their romance works. If you think our library is missing a romance genre you love, please let us know in the comments. We will do our best to make that content available. Please subscribe to the channel so we can keep creating free audiobooks for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for being with us, and have a wonderful listening.
This content is adapted in order to comply with YouTube's safe content guidelines and regulations. If you wish to read the full text containing all the steamy scenes, you can download the full unedited book from the link available in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy your audiobook.
Fake Romance. Bad Boy Sports Romance, written by Andy Wayne, a USA Today bestselling author.
Chapter 1.
Where do bad boys go when they die? Probably to sleep with a girl they don't like. She broke my heart and cut it in two, and now I'm down and dirty for you. Bare-chested and half-sane, with no consideration for all the ears who must hear his repetitive lines, he's like an old woman with a faulty hearing aid who can't hear how bad she sounds. Marlon is singing his woes, or his woes are singing for him, with his arms flung in the air like he's about to break into a #1 flop of a tune. He's beautiful with it, though, as the entourage would agree, as they applaud him and tell him how marvelous he is, that his true talents lie elsewhere, and he must consider a career as a solo artist. Right. But no girl has broken his heart, so the song makes no sense, even to him. He's not drunk either, more on a bender, doing whatever he wants and singing whatever the hell he needs to. He's been at it for the past 2 hours with the same sad lines over and over. He and his dedicated apple polishers, who may not literally polish his apples, but do their best to lick his boots the best they can. Bravo! Bravo! That's not what his guests say, but they might as well. They wouldn't sound any more ridiculous than they already do. Their cheers are more hushed with a monotone, "Woo, yeah!" Then they clap, 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 with an enthusiasm that would make the most terrible performer feel uplifted. They occupy his living quarters that are quite grand. He knows that everything in this room cost more than their mortgages, even if they lived in relatively big homes with even 6 or 7 bedrooms. They come to have a nosy look at his digs, his personal swimming pool in the room next door, which he had fitted and adjusted just a few days ago. Reaching 27 feet in diameter, mounted vertically, is the shape of a large hexagon soccer ball. It's held in a gold and black vinyl liner with the little diamond in the center, and when you gaze down at the bottom of the pool, you see his initials engraved in gold, spelling MT. There's also a personalized fountain of himself. It's pretty ballsy, but what really bites the scrotum is the fact that his statuesque self is taking a piss in the luxuriously expensive pool. It's in the sort of position where the delight at relieving oneself in the pool is clearly evident in the features. A cheeky grin, and fingers clumsily unbuttoning the drawers to let out the ding-dong, King Kong. The water flows well, and it is a worthy and true rendition of himself. Marlon loved the wallpaper, especially enlarged image of a pimped-out Lamborghini. Silver, with golden wheels, and a hood that automatically creams back so icily. The doors are flung open like a Batmobile. And speaking of the Batmobile, the living quarters where he and the guests are is decked out with memorabilia, from the old Batman of the 1960s to the present Batman of the 2000s and everything in between. There are the actual costumes worn by the actors, complete with masks and capes, posters of the villains, signatures from the actors, and larger-than-life-size Batman and Robin figures that were considered cheesy in their time, but are still iconic for the 1960s. These all reside inside custom cabinets for the guests to observe and ogle. Then there's the black leather 8-seater with the large B for Batman on the center. The remainder of the room is the black carpet, cinema-sized TV at 100 inches, that is controlled by a mobile remote that also reveals a hidden area where photographs of him, and him some more, stay invisible to the eye. The minibar and customized Dr. Dre Beat speakers are also controlled by the remote. The mic stand was personally given to him by one of his friends here now. Sing it again, Marlon. Teresa is the active valley girl with snowy teeth, pristine skin, perfect smile, and heavy makeup. She got him the karaoke set to scorn him.
I think I've done more now, Marlon says with some relief, because the question of where do you go when you die plagued him for the entire end. There was no answer to that yet, but the night was still young. In the UK, they call them wags. He sees Teresa as being a footballer's trophy more than a wife. She exudes money from a place of entitlement and seems to enjoy being a player merely on the off chance that she might get mentioned in a cheesy paper. Her photo snapped with some footballer on the rise.
Has he stopped? Asking that question is Georgia. She's the redhead with the high society outlook, designer garb and pricey attitude, like Paris Hilton, but with more ankles and a less bird-like face. She's nice too. Way nicer on the eyes, he thinks. He's always figured Georgia was classy, with her well-shaven legs and dark purple eyeshadow. I was thinking of singing something to get us in the mood, Georgia, Marlon teases. There's an uncomfortable and then she looks to her gay best friend, Felipe, a popular wag fashion designer, often known to occupy footballers' cribs with both eyes shut and his ears wide open. A columnist in his own right when it comes to gossip, and known to say it as it is. In this case, his input was, I think you're handsome and all, Marlon, but you can't sing for shit. Thank freaking God, somebody with the balls to tell me I'm shit. The unlikeliest one, I must say. Philippe gives a flirtatious hand swipe downwards and then a wink. Have you come to the dark side yet? His olive skin was glossy and gleaming. You know me, baby. Always down to do it dirty. Marlon doesn't mind flirting with Philippe from a detached point of view. It's harmless, and he's acceptable. And gay is gay until you tell him otherwise. Nice to have a bunch of fakes in my crib. You consider us fakes? We're about as close to friends as you'll get right now. It was Teresa delivering that speech with some feeling. Friends are you? You tell me my singing voice is good. Marlon pats his bare chest like, Witch, please. And you show up here when you hear the news. He pats his chest again, because he has a bit of a throaty cough, and it helps to bring it forward. What news? Georgia and Teresa chime in at the same time. It's a little too coincidental, the way they say it. We came here to celebrate with you. Georgia says this on her own as she relaxes back into the sofa. I haven't seen you guys in weeks, or maybe months, but I know that wag time works differently. Always belittling the title. Don't you damn want to be wags? And girls who just want to tap into your bank balance and get themselves a diamond ring? Marlon wishes they would leave now. Where exactly is this conversation going? I do what I gotta do. You came to celebrate, so let's do that. He picks up the remote from the side of the sofa and reveals the minibar that rises on the far left of the gigantic TV. Party and bullshit. The bar is still rising when he reaches it. What do you all want? We want a revelation. What really went down? Teresa rolls out the really on her tongue, and Marlon watches the emphasis as her lower and top lip depart widely. She lets it dawdle a bit, then it disappears as fast as her interest when she sees Philip getting up to have a little bum wiggle at a house mix. Marlon turned on the woofer Dr. Dre speakers as a distraction, like an offensive move to distract Teresa and her observational skills. He raises it up until all that can be detected is the bass and the oomph, 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 oomph that throbs with precision as the floor beneath them shakes and they each strain their faces to the lyrics that blast from Marlon's mouth.
Said if I suggest you'll...
He's at it again. Teresa leans in to whisper this to Georgia, who's already getting up and making her way to stand with Marlon, so instead she continues the conversation by herself. Always like that. She leans back with a harumph and kicking off her heels in a way that reaches close to where the two entwine. You should join the festivities. Marlin has Georgia inside one arm and has another opened for her to join. There's room for one more. They both start to do some sort of ankle tap-tap and then switch it over and do another. I don't do threesomes. Teresa can see that with the ankle tap-tap comes Marlin's palm all over Georgia's butt as he pulls her in and squeezes, squishes, massages, and then even slaps a few times. It's not done in a sleazy manner, more with eyes closed, pressing against her skin and biting into her neck as she coyly pretends to enjoy it. Philippe is doing his own thing without a care in the world. He's bucking down and pushing out those bum cheeks to the house mix with his own personal electrodes buzzing inside of him. He then does this interchanging arm crossover, with his two heels knocking together, and then the full foot extending to the back of the other leg, and then switching to the other. House ravers would appreciate the artful use of the legs and the sharpness of every step to every beat. Marlin lets go of Georgia, who runs over to join Philippe by the corner of the minibar to try and learn the steps. She takes note, painfully trying to mimic his footwork that is quicker than her chance to ask him to. Show me that again? Marlin claps in laughter, and that literally means he's clapping taps to the timing of Georgia, who misses every single beat. The girl can't dance, and it's painfully amusing to witness, though he doesn't make it outright obvious that he is laughing at her. Marlin goes over to the bar and raises a bottle of Irish whiskey, the wild geese, of course, to Teresa, who is watching him like a bald eagle that watches a salmon failing to make that special jump to their natural birthplace. She looks tickled pink as he fails to open the whiskey bottle lid on his first attempt, the second and the third, though he strikes lucky when the illusion of his hands being slippery leaves him. Marlin drags out 4 tiny shot glasses and lays them on the bar front. Philippe and Georgia are now in his view as he pours at least 4 centimeters into each, reaching the final glass with Teresa holding it steady for him. He pours, as she watches him do it, then lifts the shot glass and dumps the contents into the back of her throat, then slams it down for another shot. "Keep it coming! The night is young!" Teresa screams. The music is blaring. "It's nearly 4 a.m., but I agree, the day is very young." He pours her some more, and she downs it instantly again, readying herself for him to pour her another. Why the blank face? It is common knowledge that I come here under false pretenses to drink your booze and enjoy your company for the sake of my personal advancement. Teresa lifts her glass. "You going to top me up?" Marlin looks to Georgia, who has one arm over Philip, as he slowly tries teaching her the steps again. Is it like this? Marlin can barely make out what Georgia said, as the enactment nearly lands her on the floor. No, you need to do it like this. Philippe demonstrates something with a kickback and bending of the knee, then bringing it back in front of him into a slow crossover of the right foot. Philippe looks relaxed in the purplish velvet suit that he designed and created himself for the visiting occasion. It is Philippe's visiting suit that has him looking both expensively gay and expensively smart, and casual at the same time. Don't ignore me and watch them. I know what this is all about. Teresa gets all up in his viewing of Georgia and Philippe, and he would prefer to watch them than have her judgmental breath come lording down upon him. Should I reveal the basics? If you do, the party is over, and you can leave through the back door. He pops the lid back on his Irish whiskey. I invited you 3 here because I can tolerate your ass kissing enough for me to make it through another shit night. But I won't have you coming onto my property and telling me about my business. Whatever you read, you'll have to speak up. Teresa grabs the whiskey bottle, and Marlin grabs it right back. Easy, Marlin. We all know your history with the ladies and dominance. Ladies? Yes. Would you consider yourself one? He knows that hit her right in the rib cage and rattled it a little too. He holds on to the whiskey bottle, not wanting to use it, but tempted to not let her try that shit again. After my experience with you. Drunken one-night stand. Marlon grabs the remote on the side and taps on the volume button, letting the bass and audio tear through his mansion walls. The neighbors. What neighbors? He doesn't have any within hearing distance. He lives in a 10-bedroom mansion that's a Beverly Hills equivalent, with a security gate outlining the whole property and cameras decked behind bushes, specially planted trees, large gold stones made as a gift from a fashion designer, and concealed high up on the front door. Security is a must for Marlon, and right now, he feels inclined to call the police on Teresa, whose nails are getting a little too sharp. Hypothetically speaking, that is. You're nothing without that dodgy sponsorship and endorsement. Your manager's a crooked pervert as well. She wants to draw blood, but she isn't trained in the art of offending Marlon. He turns the volume up so high now that Georgia and Philip can't take the vibration and reverb anymore. Their faces squash like they've tasted lemons, and they wave at Marlon to lower it before the relief of deafness becomes their friend. Teresa does the same, begging for him to stop, or she'll pelt her shot glass at his face. Marlon gives her a no-remorse look, but can see that Georgia and Philippe's ears don't need the abuse. Even Marlon is struggling to cope with the frequency. He lowers it little by little, until their groans and pleas for him to reduce the damn thing are heard over the lyrics. That was wild. Was that the highest it goes? Philippe walks crookedly to the bar, rubbing the back of his leg as he does. The gay hasn't had a drink, but sure is uneasy on his feet. Marlon checks the remote. Nope, it can go at least 20 more taps up. I'm sure my neighbors would hear it then. I need to get me one, Philippe says, rubbing his leg. Georgia, darling, you kicked me. That explains the disabled walk and unusual leg rubbing. Marlon's crazy system made me jump. I swear your windows were close to shattering. Georgia walks to the bar, tapping both of her ears. My ears are still ringing. She then picks up a shot glass with Philip at the same time. Shall we drink to a great night with Marlon? If you do, he might sue you, Teresa says from the sofa, where she is putting her heels back on. A nice pair of beige and black high heels, with a glittery bow over the part where the feet protrude. It's Chanel or some brand that Marlon doesn't really care for, but he knows women usually go for that sort of thing as they attempt to display a good standard in women's fashion. Are you leaving? Georgia asks with surprise, and Philip has his eyebrows in a furrow with the shot glass ready to propel. I've had enough of the ass-kissing for one day. I'd rather do it with somebody who has a legitimate claim to fame. She slides on her other shoe. He doesn't want us here anyway. No shit! Marlon lip-syncs this to himself and pours a shot, too. Not without one more shot. He holds it up to her in a cheery light. Can't leave without the departing one. Georgia holds hers up, too. Come on, one last shot. Philippe desperately wants his last shot and raises his without a word. Chapter 2. Teresa likes the attention. It shows her importance, even if Marlon knows that Philippe and Georgia only put up with her because her connections can effectively turn a pauper into a prominent Saudi broker. The reason, well, she has a brother who knows another brother, who knows a man that Marlon once went to see. With anticipation as Teresa comes over, Marlon makes sure that the drink being tossed on that glorious vintage black blouse will bear the stain of the great Irish. All will long remember the blasphemous name that dared to tinge such a lavish top. That name is Wild Geese. Teresa reacts with her arms outstretched and her mouth and jaw hanging open in pure shock. Philippe is stunned, his reaction a perfect replique of Teresa's reaction, though with a sense of humor behind it. Georgia reacts to the ruined blouse and now sees that Marlon isn't done, as he flings more whiskey from the bottle all over her from where he stands. In fact, he comes from around the minibar in the center of the carpet and pours the entire contents of the bottle over Teresa's hair. Don't ever say I didn't get you wet. He likes that finish, and he enjoys it even more when her shock at what he did propels her into a complete hissy fit, albeit a quiet one, rendering her quiet and quaking, unable to counter this move with even a verbal barrage. He'll pay for it, of that he is certain. But right now, he feels some redemption. She storms out of the room, and Philippe, who has a crush on her brother, follows after her until Marlon hears the door open and shut. It is now only Marlon and Georgia in the room, and her eyes are on the damp patch with the empty whiskey bottle that is on the carpet. Marlon switches off the music. "Can you move away from the bar?" He says this with no room for politeness. He's tired now and wants to be alone. He doesn't want to have sex with the redhead who he sleeps with on rare occasion and hopes she won't spill his sexual fantasies and secrets. He becomes aware that he is bare-chested and chiseled before her. Georgia takes note of his half-naked body and gives him a small grin. He read between the lines of that smile that seemed to say, "I want to lay, but I wonder if you'll give me the same treatment you gave Teresa?" He reads all that and wonders if he needs help. Her grin increases when she walks forward. He backs up, unfortunately, because he really is tired, and taking her would be a mixture of grunts and a few quick seconds of pumping. No quickie and leave. Georgia avoids looking at the torso, but stares right at him. "I would like some of that treatment upstairs in that waterbed of yours." Marlon studied the detail of her oval eyes that have always stood out. They are close together and attract attention, in part from the color which is red. Yes, red eyes. It was very rare, and she was indeed ridiculed and accused of wearing permanent contact lenses. They're very dark, so it could be mistaken for a reddish-brown, but Georgia told him once that down the family lines, she had a distant cousin with even redder eyes. She had even showed him a vintage photograph of the woman, and the resemblance to Georgie was so striking that Marlon figured that, but for the age difference, it could have been her biological mother. "On any other day I would usually call you up and detail where and when we should do it. I'd have my hired help prepare the bedroom and leave the most exquisite bottle of champagne. We would get the jacuzzi in my room on that red-hot level, and then have you ride me until the next morning because the champagne would give me a Superman jolt of an erection. But tonight, I am plutonium." Georgia licks her lips and lets it go, lowering her eyes to make their way down Marlon's torso, to his belly button, to the area where the pubes begin, and finally arriving with a flash of surprise in her eyes at the sight of his crotch. She lifted her hand, but doesn't place it on his manhood. She instead grabs his butt and gives it a firm squeeze, moving in to bite his bottom lip and let it awkwardly linger. She squeezes tighter, and Marlon stares at her blankly, though some stimulation is rising within his body. She then withdraws as her eyes look to his lips. Georgia then looked down a little to examine his torso. The tat with the smoking skull, shades, long black hair, and the words blasphemous coming from the smoke make up the lower level of Marlon's dark-skinned torso. His two sleeves are a distorted and psychedelic depiction of gangster rap and rock and roll, combined with Biggie, Tupac, Eazy-E, Kurt Cobain, and Johnny Cash. The left arm has the same faces upon it, but the faces of each artist are less distorted and aimed at being the fruit from the subtle tree that runs down his entire arm. The sleeve was meant to portray that these artists came from the very same tree, but nobody gets it. Marlon gets it. He knows that Georgia doesn't get it. She's never asked him about it. Never considered the fact that each tattoo has a message. Maybe one that might have passed its sell-by date, but it's still there on his body to visualize. Marlon thinks this is meant to be some sort of arousal, but it doesn't usually work for him that way. It reminds him of being 7 years old again and wanting to suck his thumb because his mom was cruel enough to take his dummy. He peeps his head to look at her, then he realizes it's a ploy to get him to stop. She's withholding, like she always does. Her body is hers, and Marlon feels like an intruder who's been given access to it. But he always tells her, "I'm not really in the mood," and they still end up doing the deed. The pleasure is always in the trying. When he's out in the fields and he's that close to scoring, that close to making a difference for his teammates and his tally, that close to getting the golden boot and pronouncing his name up against those who have an even more impressive scorecard, then he knows that extra push to get there is worth it. With women, he knows the value in substantially bringing more than just a quickie. Georgia's show of appreciation isn't there just yet. He has to work her up, make her shiver, allow her body to fully surrender. It's part of the plan. Women rarely get there from mere penetration, a percentage of 10% he'd heard. Marlon reckons that women get off more on the mind work, the dissecting of character, that intensity that exists in the anticipation of, what will he do? He tweaks it here and there. He knows he's doing overtime. The minute he takes a breather, she squiggles for him to continue, content with staying as a silent bottom. It goes on, and still there is nothing much on her end of things. Marlon's exhausted, tried to engage her to get on top, but Georgia has gone funny. Full stop won't continue funny. Marlon stops. "Everything okay?" "I just sort of got distracted midway. I think it must be tiredness." "I'll climb off." "Why? Don't you want to sort of talk about it?" Marlon hovers over her chest area awkwardly, trying to hold himself up and not lay with his full weight on top of her. Talk about what?" He adjusts himself again, his biceps, triceps, and lower arm area making the plank that much easier from his visit to the gym yesterday. "Why I'm distracted?" she asked. Marlon cares about as much as his mom did whenever he'd tried to talk to her about a problem. Her response was so flat that he thought he'd have to perform CPR for a cardiac arrest. "I thought we spoke about this, Marlon? You can't continue to burden me with your troubles. What did I do to deserve this?" "Are you seriously thinking it's about you? Does everything always have to be about you? Why can't it be about me, my feelings, my difficulties, me having to go from footballer to soccer star with no concept of a future with any of them? I just want somebody to talk to." "And your conclusion is that you can talk to me, Marlon?" "Why me? I'm the last person you should look to. All I care about is myself, pure and simple, and I don't make it a secret that my lifestyle is for me alone." Georgia continued. "It's a stupid way to live, Marlon. What made you like this?" Marlon wants to get off now. That same old question. Do you want me to answer that a woman scorned me and left me broken-hearted? The story is nowhere along those lines. Then what is it? Marlon jumps off, making sure that he removes his person first because he has manners. He avoids looking at her, but her eyes burn into him like he's a blank piece of paper, and he's waffling, but never enough to address that question. Georgia waits, but she knows nothing is going to come from him. "No explanation, huh? It's getting to the point where I can't be doing this with you anymore." Marlon stands there in his nakedness, peering out his window with those specially made Batman Incorporated drapes that were featured in that Footballers' Lives episode. His attention is on her pink Lamborghini. That thing is a hell of a ride, and that's a positive thing. It is the queen bee next to his blue and white Dodge Viper that is the king. They look good in comparison, shiny, brand new, flashy, money, 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 and the smell of cooperating in the game. Marlon hates his Dodge Viper just as much as he hates her pink Lamborghini. It's settled within himself. He's made up his mind. "Then, Georgia, I suppose we should cut the loss and split up my Viper and your Lamborghini."
Chapter 3. Georgia left quicker than he anticipated. There was a sharp silence that a bread knife would have trouble cutting through, and then she just shot up like a graceful ballerina and elegantly picked up her top, skirt, shoes, earrings, knickers, and ankle bracelet, then left with it all in a bundle. Marlon can't recall if she left undressed. In fact, he didn't check. He went straight to his room and got under those luxurious cream duvet covers that feel like the wool of dozens of sheep, compacted into one. He was quickly preparing to drift off to sleep with the sound of Georgia's engine revving against the asphalt. He can also make out the subtle pressing down of the tires, as if they are spinning and flattening the surface. Another sound comes into his hearing, a familiar and often messy retribution act that will be murder in the morning for his staff to handle. Georgia has tapped into the spinning donut, the wheelie trick with one of the back tires, throwing dirt all over the front of the mansion and making sure it makes as much mess as possible. It awakens his life as well, in the form of a cleaner who came through the front door screaming in Colombian that Georgia needs to stop. Marlon speaks very little Spanish, but knows the added exclamation of para. It's something that Chili often uses in her vocabulary, and frequently referencing his female companions. He hired her because he needs to wake up to that on early mornings like this. Right? Some of the flying dirt must have made it into Chili's mouth, because now he hears her muffling and spitting. Then a momentary silence. Finally, the car is zooming off, and Chill is yelling in English. "You're a crazy lady." Then the Spanish follows aggressively, but Marlon can't make it out, so rolls over and settles into a blissful sleep. He awakens to a knocking on the front door the next morning. He rolls over and checks his Atoma digital clock. It's 11:25 a.m., and he isn't expecting any visitors, so he goes back to sleep. He hears the thumping again, more profound, and more determined to be heard this time, with even more knock-knock-knocking added in there. Chili doesn't answer it. She knows better than to answer to strangers. "Travis, can you open up, please?" "Aw, man." Marlon pulls the duvet over his head. If that voice is who he thinks it is, then it's better to play mute and seek forgiveness later. There is a different banging on his bedroom door now, but it is polite, unforceful, and undemanding. "Mr. Travis, Benjamin Holton is outside wanting to speak with you. Should I let him in?" Chili asks. Marlon groans like an angry bear and wonders if he should come out of this temporary hiding position that is his safe haven for the moment. He hears Benjamin again. "Travis, open this door." He calls him by his last name because it comes across as formal and important. It detaches their relationship that is still quite proper, but has a lighter salt and vinegar touch when he speaks. "I know you haven't been to training in the past week." Word gets around quickly then. Not only do his fake friends speak of knowing things he wants kept quiet, but now, right outside, is a man who knows another piece of his business. "Yes, Mr. Travis." She clearly has good waiting skills, because he himself wouldn't wait for so long. But then, he has no patience. "You can go back to what you were doing before. I'll deal with Benjamin." "Okay, Mr. Travis." He hears Chili slowly make her way down the steps. He then continues to the window, draws back his black drapes, and unbuckles the right and left latch, drawing open the window and peering out to see Benjamin taking steps back with a chuckle as he surveys the house that must still be muddy. Withdrawing a notepad from his inside pocket, Benjamin takes notes. Then he gets out his camera and starts to take a few snaps, then raises it upwards, only to see Marlon staring down at him through the upper window. "Which wag did you upset this time?" He chuckles at the carnage, and then the spot where the car's spinning wheel gave the mansion a full-on shower. He snaps that, too. Then he holds the camera to one of his eyes and plays with the adjustment of the camera mode and angle. "Should I take the guilty snap?" "Of me?" "I am always innocent, Benjamin. Didn't we agree on this?" "Wasn't your last article glorifying my playboy ways and knack for messing with women who only want me for my millions?" Times change, and we need to speak about that changing tide. You know there's talk, Marlon. "When isn't there?" Marlon now crosses one wrist over the other and leans forward. Am I on the front page? You will be, if we can talk, that is. Benjamin lowers his camera. I think your maid has her work cut out today. She's not a maid, nor hired help. I consider Chili to be a member of this home. So, edit your article next time, because the last was full of bloody lies. Benjamin sneers at this. It's not a mean or sinister sneer, but a slight curving of the lip on the right side with his nearly invisible eyebrows and tightly slit eyes beaming with an expression that he always carries. Is the rising star telling me how to be a better writer? Now you can come in. Marlon goes back in, and the last thing Benjamin sees is the closing of the top window. Chapter 4. Marlon takes Travis into the usual room where they meet for their weekly discussions. At least when he can be bothered to have a conversation with the man. The room is like an office, as there is a black and gold desk that glitters, a pristinely white recliner tucked underneath it, and 2 large indoor plants that curl from the center of the stem. A couple of large portraits with sports car sketches adorn one wall, received from an artist that often sends him his work. Also, there were some posters with Marlon holding up signed shirts for fans. There are plenty of these photos, as he values their support, and this reminds him from time to time how far he has come. The only thing throwing off the room is the silver snooker table that has stainless steel balls, with the center being the only indication of what color is what. Then, too, is the sizable scale of his club's football stadium, Portland FC, made from clay, and positioned right in the middle of the room. It is enclosed in a casing with some information about the day it was built, and the artist. Few people know that it was done by Marlon, as were the sketches, but he chooses to keep that side of him confidential. You sure do love your silver, black, and gold. Benjamin is always taken aback by the scale of the room and its contents. Each time he reacts as if it's the first time he's seen it. You say the same thing over and over, Marlon observes, as he sits on the edge of the desk with his hands crossed. So, how's the writing business? Owned by those with more power than I have. Benjamin hovers by the scale model and bends down to peek. I never get tired of looking at this. The miniature players inside that stadium feel tired of that aging 40-something-year-old face, though. Did you get your hair cut? How does it look? Benjamin pops back up. It adds years to you, actually. But all in all, you had too much fluff going on, like some sort of cauliflower. Less hair suits you. And you... tattoos on the shaved areas of your head now? What's the new one? Demon wings on both ends. I covered up the last one. Marlon feels the top of his head where minimal hair can be felt. I want to get more. Like shave it bald and tattoo my entire skull. Should I write this down? Benjamin's tone was mocking, and he added a small chuckle. I let you in because you said there'd been talk. That, and you also admitting to being a shit writer without actually saying it. That was a pleasure. Benjamin sneers again, but it's shrouded in some signs of being slightly offended. He taps his knuckles against the casing a few times. I know they want to knock the stadium down and replace it with a kindergarten school. I hear you oppose the idea because it's sentimental to the fans? Marlon rotates his shoulders and then extends his neck from side to side. I have no say in it, and I don't want to talk about that. The expansion could be a better option for more revenue and ticket sales, but they don't seem to want to do that. I believe the fans should have more say, as they have been loyal since the frigging 70s, filling that place up and bringing them their hundreds of millions. That's a winning line to use, Benjamin said, taking out his notepad. I know this is an off-the-record sort of talk, but it doesn't hurt to jot some of it down. Marlon pushes himself off the edge of the desk. Off the record, Benjamin. That's what you come to me for. That's where your information of what comes in. Correct? Benjamin removes his knuckles. Yeah, but you're holding back. What was the talk you had with the manager? We don't always see eye to eye. What did you hear? Marlon asked, walking to the center of the room to the snooker table. I'm sure there are various stories going around. Benjamin scrambles inside his jacket, bringing out what looks like a folded-up paper. When he unfolds it, Marlon sees that it's the Footy Insider, a free paper made popular by the genius of a fan who was an SEO expert. He managed to gather over 1,000 followers per week to his website by getting bogus information to fans, pissing off the real news outlets that weren't that interesting anyway. There were 10 pages altogether, with a mock interview section and pictures of the 20 teams in the league, which was the only reliable information. There was a fantasy team competition where you could win tickets to your favorite team, and other pages about team gossip, future talent predictions, and all the other bits. Marlon liked the paper when it first came out, and it was popular because it debunked those billionaire owners who care nothing for the beauty of the sport. And the chairman could be even bigger assholes. Marlon was often on the good side of the paper, as he often didn't take himself too seriously. Benjamin flipped through the few pages, stopping on one page to read aloud. The Footy Insider has heard talks of 24-year-old striker Marlon Travis of Portland FC, now widely renowned as a peaking talent with the scoring ability that could win him the Golden Boot. Benjamin takes a breath, then continues again. The only downside to all this is that Marlon and his manager have a confrontational history, and talks of him being transferred to Rito United, the team where his well-known nemesis Tokyo plays, are very much in the air. Benjamin stops reading and peeks over the paper. Should I go on? Marlon flings his head down and keeps it there. The genius is that this guy is never wrong, really. He sells papers, though many consider it fake news, yet his predictions are scarily accurate. He folds the paper and holds it out, walking towards Marlon. Marlon raises his head. What do you expect me to do with that? Read the rest of it. He even talks about your failed relationships, but he never once interviewed you, right? Yet, he knows more than I do about you. Pretty scary.
That's what's brought you here. Marlon takes the paper. The Footy Insider with his entertaining discourse about my... If I was going to be involved in a transfer process like that, I would let you know. United with that sham of a player who was me big time, by the way, is utter nonsense. He opens it up and has a look through it.
Benjamin lowers his lips with a coming from them. My mini magazine gets all the information before anybody else, and I thank you for the last piece of bit regarding you being suspended from training due to that little accident. Why you stay with a manager who can't stand you is beyond me. You forget that I have something on him. Marlon stops mid-sentence and flips the page around for Benjamin to see. Who's that? Marlon lifts the page higher and points at the image of the model, with an angular but well-refined face. There is a crease in her chin as she smiles with whitened teeth and thin lips, although her bottom lip is slightly plumper. She's an Americanized model, not blonde with blue eyes, but defined in the aesthetically pleasing image of a woman within the realms of what the modeling society considers beautiful. The fact that she is of Egyptian descent, with very little knowledge of her family, adds to the appeal of the story of her coming to the States, seeking a better life, and achieving that goal through her chiseled and astute face. That, Benjamin, is Jessa Monroe, and you'll never guess what I know. Chapter 5. I want you to give me a luring baby. Give me baby cakes and Daddy got you a Ferrari with a poodle in the passenger seat. He snaps. I want you to bend over like you're tying your laces. Snap, snap, snap. Don't look at the lens. Focus on me. Look at the intensity that my eyes are transferring to you. He gets on his knees and leans into the shot. Clickety-click. When did you last have a real climax? It doesn't matter because that face you're giving me is a one-night stand, honey. He rolls over like a dog, with the camera rotating with him. And while he does, he's getting every single angle, capturing every single mood, movement, emotion, and annoyance from the model. She arches, curls, twists, and uses the decor around her, including regal furniture like a lampstand, table, sofa, rug, and herself, of course. The way the photographer is acting, she might as well be decor, too. He gets up from the floor, goes over to his stack of accessories, and yells, "Is the male model ready yet?" There is no reply, as it's just the two of them in the room, his two assistants having run off to find the male model who should be here. Very unprofessional. I don't care how beautiful he is. I don't do late comers. He screams to himself in the hope that they're catching this. If he comes, tell him to go home and think about how hard this industry is. Isn't he a footballer? The model comes out of a pose that had her palm holding the back of her head while she leaned back upon it. I don't do footballers. She adjusts the long white shirt that's the length of a dress and wishes to button it up as her lacy lingerie set is visible. Keep that open. This is my nightwear set and I need a few more shots. Gabriel, we've been at this for the past 4 hours. How many more shots do you need? Jessa, Gabriel says this breathlessly. I've told you. Let the photographer do his or her job. Don't question the work that we do. I heard you're famous for complaining about everything. Today, not so bad. Did you have your medication? Suck that, Gabriel. Jessa plonks herself on the floor. She could have sat on the single or regal double sofa, but no, Jessa chose to sit on the cold floor, because who wouldn't? I could do with a cigarette right now? Gabriel chuckles. That's the medication I was talking about. He walks over to Jessa with a dummy packet of cigs in his hand. I'm not being cruel. I just want you to give off that vibe for the smoking hot housewife, too. The cig represents that. I think it's stupid. Jessa folds her legs and places her elbow on her thigh, holding the side of her face. I hope you're going to pay me for today. I always pay you. I'm not like these designers who hire these models and give them their merchandise or clothes. I know models have to eat, especially one as highbrow as you. In only 1 month, you've become the most booked model since Tasha. Where she's gone, I don't know. But still, I suppose your time is now. Jessa feels depressed hearing this. The admiration that comes from getting booked for gigs and finally getting her chance to earn some serious cash is hard to stomach. It's what she had to do that made it this way. It's the reason that when the male model comes into the room, who is actually a footballer she's seen before, it makes her spring up and walk out. Jessa, where are you going? Gabriel is chasing after her with his tighter-than-tight black leather pants and his silky leopard print shirt that reveals his protruded chest that sticks out further than his actual stomach. Like he's wearing an invisible corset. Jessa buttons up her long shirt and grabs her black leather jacket with the Guns N' Roses logo on the back. She flings it on and forces a gap between the two assistants who are drinking their coffee, nearly knocking it out of their hands. Some spills, and they exchange bewildered looks, as Gabriel is the next one to blast between them. Young lady, will you stop? Maybe it was the young lady that caught Jessa by surprise, but she stops to let him catch up. She is standing by the entrance to the stairway that leads to the backdoor exit. Jessa usually makes it a habit to locate backdoor exits, as she likes to slip out when nobody is looking and go for a cruise in whatever city or state she might be in.
I thought you come to tell me I'd forgotten my shoes. Jessa looks down to her feet and sees that her comfortable flats are there. Oh, I did actually forget my shoes. She turns around to go back for them and walks into a furious-looking Gabriel.
He holds onto her shoulders to stop her and then removes his hands. You're blowing my money. If you don't finish this photo shoot, I will personally blacklist you completely from all the A-listers I know. I don't care how much I love you. Darling, I have to be stern because time is money. I have to get this all fixed before Sunday. And sweetheart, today is Friday, meaning I'm way behind schedule. Work with me.
Jessa sighs. I was happy to do the shoot for you. But that footballer in there is Robin Bailey. I know his brother, too. You might have missed his face when he saw me. It was stuck on a full stop, not knowing whether to leave the room or to greet me like everything between us is normal. What happened that night? I read it in the papers. Was it true? The papers know about as much as the police do. Portland FC will always be a team of miscreants and cow dung. Robum is a Portland FC defender, and I don't mingle with them. Jessa proceeds to walk past Gabriel, but his bony fingers land on her shoulders again, sending a chill down her spine, as she prefers not to be touched unless her permission has been granted. I know you hate to be touched, and I apologize for that. But what if I ask him to leave and you finish off here? He can come back later and pose with a more willing participant. Is that enough? Jessa can see Robum on her site as the laminated flooring is as large as a small community center, although it is on the 3rd level. The room is separated into sections, an open floor plan with no doors, just walkthroughs and squares shaped into the walls. It's also very white. But when Jessa sees Robum up ahead in the furthest section, he dirties it to the point of his presence becoming stains on the wall. He stands there dull and passive. The assistants busy themselves around him, but he refuses everything and seems rattled. When he catches Jessa staring at him, the rattled cage within becomes obvious to her. She takes him in, as she wasn't able to last time. Robum is more of a UFC tank than a footballing machine. He has the firm hardness when it comes to body muscle and visibility. A square face, funny-looking chin, and details that a camera could photograph and love. The camera could make him look better, especially in the right light. Jessa thinks he's unattractive, but the modeling world seems to like unusual-looking people. He's bare-chested, with night shorts from Gabrielle's sleepwear line. She thinks the silkiness of the fabric and the way it leaves nothing to the imagination will do for some, but to her, it's tacky. She cuts her eyes at him and then sees that her shoes are in that section. Would you get me my shoes? I'll finish the shoot if he leaves. Chapter 6. The invitation came with a quick text that said, "My husband is not home."
Marlon likes the sense of humor because she has no husband. Only a rich guy who pays for her to have the pleasure of her company. He gets gratification from his who want only the materialistic things in life.
She is tall, really tall, almost taller than him, in fact. Shade's enjoying it, and it reminds him of 2 snakes coiling together over and over again. It comes to a point where she squeezes him to stop. Marlon stops and then waits for what is to come next. As she felt silent, he makes a face, then lies on his back and stares at the ceiling. Whipped cream and strawberries, ice cubes and tweezers. He fantasies about this. It's not what he usually does, but today, Marlon seems relaxed. After speaking with Benjamin a few days ago and giving him the information that he needed, he felt like a load had been lifted from him. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was part of it. He said he would meet to discuss Jessa, and he would stick to that. But right now, he was content with this carnal episode. It wasn't the greatest, but it had moments of connecting with each other. But that was only because she had wanted to make out, which is unusual when it comes to these situations. The kissing is minimal, and the intercourse is more of the arranged deal. He waits for shade, and the waiting becomes like a delayed flight. It's only been 15 minutes, but it feels like 2 days have passed. He hasn't finished, and while he's not selfish, he still wants to have that moment. Marlon sits up to see where his clothes have gotten to. Shorts over there, his black t-shirt underneath. Boxers? He searches the bed for them and jumps up to look under the sheets. He comes to the edge of the bed and sticks his head out to have a peek. Nothing, but he does see Shade's bra, knickers, and her dress, but no boxers. He swings his body to get up. He ignores it, wondering if she's got a visitor, but she was naked. A nudist? A fellow man who can handle the sight of naked women with a body like Shade's? Fair enough. Marlon gets onto his belly to peep under the bed frame. He sees shoes in their boxes, brands from Miu Miu, Jimmy Choo, Gucci, Prada, and some others that are up and coming like Togo Shoe, and a fluffy pair from Showdown. Then he sees a scrunched-up piece of paper. No boxers, but a piece of paper will be enough to distract him from his Calvins that cost him $100 and was the epitome of the very man himself. He loves that pair. Marlon isn't nosy. He's the type that likes his own privacy. But for some reason, he wants to open this and read it. He gets up from his stomach and rotates his neck as he feels a throbbing pain at the top of his spine. Opening it up, it reads, "How many players were present that day? The day when it happened?" Marlon stiffens because when he continues to read the paper, it names a few of the Portland FC players, including himself. And another name added to the bunch is Jessa Monroe. The writing is shades, he is sure of it. He had seen her handwriting when she signed a few posters for him, as she has a talent for mimicking writing styles. Her accuracy was on point when it came to his signature. But Marlon is stifled to silence here. It's a good question. The one he asked himself on the day. When he saw... Shade comes into the room and snatches the piece of paper from him, then slaps him across the face. He's experienced that before, but not under this circumstance. Shade was in a cream gown and fluffy slippers. She looks elegant, but ruffled like a plucked chicken who still has some feathers. Her usually well-pressed black hair is fuzzifying all over the place. Her face is bland and plain, devoid of makeup. Marlon has seen many models without it, and they are definitely different creatures. Shade is not so bad, but it makes her seem tired. She scans his body and stops at his crotch. "Looking for your boxers?" She stuffs the piece of paper into her gown pocket. "I had to use them, but you'll get them back." "You slap me on the face, snatch that piece of paper from me, and then tell me that you have my favorite boxers? You're pushing me to the limit. I want my boxers back." "Really, it's only a pair of Calvin Kleins, and you are a millionaire." Marlon raises his brow as high as it can go. "I value my stuff and I don't buy out of gluttony. Only stuff I need, want, saved for." "Pah." Shade folds her arms. "You earn more than the average working-class man will ever dream of making. You don't need to save. I really hate when people come at me with this millionaire shit. Thinking because I have money, it makes me into this stiff who only buys because he can afford it." He looks to the location of the scrunched-up paper in her gown and points to it. "I read it, by the way. And I know that if you have my boxers, then they must be going to the same person who asked the question." Shade's eyes flicker from side to side, then she walks to her dresser. Opening it, she pulls out a few stacks of her lingerie, like she's searching for something. She closes it, then goes to the one beneath it, and fumbles around inside through more of her bras, tights, and stockings, finally bringing out an issue of Robum's paper, which is called The Soccer Rooster. "I'm a big-time reader of this." Marlon looks grimly at the paper as she makes it flap. On the front page is Marlon, as usual, in his gold and black home kit, holding a soccer ball and wearing a Portland FC snapback. The subheadings, in a bold white, are extracted from the interview that he did on the women in his life. And he knows that Shade was mentioned. "I can remember every word that you said about me in there. You're so confident in your escapades that you even consider me to be number 5 on your weekly bang-bang list. It was a stupid thing to do, but I find it all harmless. I mean, I don't take it seriously at all. All this," he says, gesturing around Shade's large room, "it means you know me." "That's the thing, Marlon, I don't." She chucks the magazine onto the floor before him. "You footballers think you're God's gift, but deep down, these ladies are playing you just as much as you think you're playing them. Portland FC is the one club full of this pretentious ambition to be the richest and most prosperous club, and it seems you'll do anything for it. Isn't that right?" Marlon wonders why he is always naked during these confrontations. He is even more humiliated that it never seems to distract the girls who have a go at him. He's been to the gym 3 times this week, and will be back in training next week. And still, his physique, from head to toe, isn't enough to deter these females from their intended courses of destruction. They might all be, but not me. Then, Shade steps on the magazine and twists it into her auburn carpet with her slipper heel. She then lifts her heel up and stomps on it with the heel again and again. She bends down to pick it up, flips it around so she's holding it at the side, and then begins to tear. The paper is thin. So, after a few tries, Marlon hears it rip. "Then you won't mind me destroying this with your face on it, or speaking to journalists about how shit you are in bed." And then giving Robum the interview of that night, as I know Jessa as an acquaintance, and she confided bits and bobs to me. "If you want to play with that devil, then you go ahead. But it's going to bring up worms as slimy as those who I train with every single day. Robum is a piece of work, but he keeps my name out there. He's not to be trusted unless he feels you can serve his hunger for news. If Jessa confided in you, then you need to make sure that the story is accurate." "So, you were there?" Shade's face dropped into a mouth-opening can of astonishment. The can is so wide that Marlon could fit that whole magazine down her throat. Marlon can't gauge whether telling her or not will be worthwhile. It is one thing to be so rich that you can buy silence, but it's another to carry it with you. Even though it hasn't affected him as much, it is definitely something that will creep its way into his bloodstream sooner or later. He can't escape it already. "I might have been there." He stares at her gown again. "The names. Did Jessa give that to you?" "That's my information, and I'm not going to reveal that to you. She's not the only one who was able to identify who was there that night. Teresa's boyfriend was present. Or didn't she let you know that?" Marlon pats his stomach and feels a ping of forgetfulness that Teresa's guy was there that night. There was a handful of players, not just those from Portland FC. He can see now just how badly he blocked it out. Tim still plays for Portland, but his transfer could be approaching. "They aren't together anymore, so I must have forgotten." He told her then. "I doubt it. But he's downstairs, waiting for you to get into his car so he can drive you to training for today." Marlon squints at her. His eyes narrow into something that could see through several layers of cement. "I don't have training until next week." He says otherwise. "How did he know I was here?" Marlon asked, still feeling very bare-skinned. "I had to let him know. He says he's been looking for you all day." Marlon knows who could be behind that, but his time with Shade has come to an end. He can feel that this will probably be the last time he ever gets to see her form. Those peach-shaped hips and the hourglass that starts from the shoulders going downwards are going to be hard to forget. Marlon thinks it's fate, as another beauty is checked off his list. He grabs his clothes, the ones he can find, at least. In addition to the aforementioned boxers, his socks and cap are missing. He wants to ask Shade for them, but the look she gives him isn't inviting. It tells him only to hurry up and get out. "Is this the last time you'll text me that your husband isn't home?" Marlon wants to crash and burn here. He feels he should care. So he tries it. Shade seems passive to it, and she can't even produce a real full-body shrug. It's only her facial expression that shrugs. It's like when a kid makes a face, and it's meant to hurt your feelings. To even consider the fact that I might have liked you enough to invite you for a meal is hard to stomach. I know your ways. I accept them. But that interview was another side to you, and it explained just why you're more dangerous than all those other assholes. Now you're just somebody I used to know." Marlon liked that song, but then he thinks of Gauchi's lyrics and how they apply to this moment in time. He finds it to be frightfully annoying when it's the real deal happening. Shade goes into her bathroom and locks the door. Marlon takes that as another cue to leave. He makes his way down the checked hazel and white stairway. It's like 30 steps, and is really trippy. Marlon stares down to watch his steps, thinking it's a better idea to stay downstairs when drunk, as a few times Marlon has found himself rolling down these very stairs, with her landing on him straight after, when he'd tried to carry her up to the bedroom. That episode of fun is over with now. They giggled and poked fun at one another, and a part of him grew to connect with her, just like Georgia. And now he's lost another on his list. It wasn't just a generic girls list, but a set of names that included women that he would get on the regular. Because without wanting to say it, there was something about each of them that was different. When he reaches for that handle to open the door and face another chapter in his life awaiting him in the car, he takes a quick look at her home, all of it designed by a man with an obsession for Italian decor and craft. It is very much shade, full of intrigue and good taste. Marlon opens the door and sees a 3 Series BMW parked out front. He recognizes Tim in the front seat, on his Xperia phone, and speaking with his arm hanging out the window. Marlon thinks the guy's okay. Between him and an idiot, he'd chose Tim, because the stupidity can be untaught. Marlon knocks on the window and gets Tim's attention, making him jump at the bang on the glass. But it's kind of funny to see Tim jumpy, especially since he usually looks constipated, like there's a bad smell about, perhaps from the people he comes into contact with. He rarely smiles, and it's no wonder that people often think he's got a problem with them. Even when he shifts over to the other seat to open it for Marlon, he stares up at him like his eyes are about to transform into a set of shotguns. Marlon blames the alignment of his brows. They form into a V with the extended top. Mr. Incensed would be a good nickname for this British bloke. Getting in, Marlon shuts the door. There's no hi, no greeting. Tim continues his phone call with that look of seriousness, even more off-putting when experienced up close. Marlon cares very little, though. Yo, Tim, you might want to finish your call and speak with me. Rude to interrupt a person's call, but shit needs to be answered. Tim looks at his open window and ends the call with, I'm sure he invested more than that. I'll call you back. He then hangs up and tucks the phone away in his very blue denim trouser pocket. That was very emotional. Is this a changing tide? What do you want, Tim? I'm not back until next week, and you show up here telling me you're going to take me to training. I think you're bullshitting me, and I am due in today. I'm the last to hear about it. Tim shuffles in his seat, not uneasy, but like he has an itchy ass. Yeah, I heard that you were back today and wanted to take you in, see how you were, that sort of thing. Marlon scoffs. We never spoke that much at camp. What's changed? Atmosphere? A loss of harmony? Well, no way. Marlon scoffs again, but with more of a gust from his nostrils and a bewildered headshake. Who the hell told you I was here anyway? I know your pattern of women. So do many of the other players. Unlike you, we keep our habits to ourselves. Well, I have nothing to hide, Tim, unlike the majority of the rest of you. Tim straightens his back, leans back into his seat suddenly, and falls deathly quiet as he peers out the window. Marlon neck and head twitch at this. He doesn't fully turn to look at Tim, but he can see that what he said stirred the stew. Did I say something? I didn't come to speak about that, Marlon. I just came to collect you and go to work. You've been suspended without pay. Get yourself back on the roster and into his good books. Earn your millions. Sleep with the women of your choice and party and booze. Your line right? Forget it all happened. I do. Now Marlon is the one to straighten his back from his slouching and leans back in frustration. It was him, wasn't it? Did he tell you to come and get me? Marlon starts to tap on the car window to lighten the tension in himself. I wonder what else he plans to do with me, or anybody else who was there. You're acting like the guy's some kind of god. He's a wily old manager with too much gas in the can. If you haven't heard, I'm on the transfer list, as well as a few others. Another revelation that's new to me is that he wants to fully change the staff. Marlon blinks and shakes his head. All of a sudden? Yeah. Marlon stops the tapping. His knuckles stay in their frozen position. Hold on. So, he didn't send you? Ding ding. Even with the noise effect, he makes it comes across as stale and unemotional. I was literally looking for you. And it has nothing to do with Teresa. Although you need to be careful with that one. She gets her nails done to scratch a guy's eye out. So, why are you really here? Marlon firmly keeps his gaze on him this time. Not the best face to glare at, as Tim's a bulldog. And beneath the large forehead, all his features are squashed unfairly, with almond-shaped eyes that are so close together that they almost touch at the slit. I want you to come to the stadium and help me out with a situation. Chapter 7. A capacity for 45,000 plus. And that's stretching it. Portland FC Stadium is a large rugby-shaped ball that needs to be pumped into life again. It stands at nearly 45 meters, with the roof being a clear glass covering that rises with a type of white scaffolding for the tiered setup protecting the fans from the rain. The seats are a bullion gold. It's always been that way, but the paintwork has started to reveal dirty white patches on the seating area when supporters lift it down to sit upon. It's been one of the complaints raised about the stadium falling apart. The players' complaint is the grass when they have home matches. It's not trimmed or well-maintained anymore. It's been allowed to grow uneven in areas, with some of it far too high. When running with the ball, that can impact the movement and deliverance of the ball to another player. The inside is rougher than it used to be. The paint is cracking, and the building work stands shoddy and unsupported, since repairs were at a standstill. The debate was whether to continue with a whole new repair or to just find a bigger venue and start from scratch. Supporters wanted to stay, and Portland FC players are of two minds about what they want to do. That stadium has been standing there for nearly 55 years. The supporters' children, and their children, and their children's children have all come here. It's the least they could do. Tim positioned the car into a parking space. I never knew you cared so much about the fans. I know they worship you and would hate to see you go, but your loyalty seems to lie elsewhere. You really need to get back in touch with the politics of football, Travis. He turns his neck to check behind him so he doesn't hit the car. Then he checks the side of his rear mirror and then the front. I hate parking. He then opens the car door to see if he's in line. Will you move to another team? Marlon asked. I don't want to go anywhere, but at this rate, it looks like I don't have a choice if he goes ahead with it. Tim shuts the door when he's satisfied with his parking. Marlon unbuckles his seatbelt, then strains his eyes. Tim joins him when it becomes hard to miss the episode unfolding right before their eyes. Is that Jessa Monroe? Marlon opens the car door to get out, but Tim pulls him back in. Marlon opens the car door again, and Tim does his utmost to make sure he doesn't leave. A third attempt draws the attention of Liam Carmine, the Portland FC manager who notices the repeated slamming of Marlon's door. Marlon Travis! He freezes, and this gives Jessa the chance to storm off to her silver Benz. He loses track of this until he hears the dig-dig electrical sound of the car being unlocked. Jessa, stay there. He tries to grab her arm, but it slips right through his hand. Look over there. Jessa peers over as Liam blocks her from closing the door. She sees Tim, the bulldog with a face so serious that Freddy Krueger could go out of business. And next to him, a more subtle and softer face. Not a baby face with the chubby cheeks and wide, innocent eyes, but a face that will remain youthful when it reaches old age. She knows him. She saw him that night. She found him pleasing to some degree. He seemed different. He wasn't what she considered too much of a douchebag to converse with. Out of all the big egos in that room, she found it amazing that the most talented was the nicest. Travis had remained decent, despite all the praise he received. His manner suggested that he cared very little for it all, yet sincerely loved the sport. Their interaction had been brief. He stared for longer than he should have when she had come up to him to have a word. There were other models around him, all very airy and giggly, with no shame of their superficiality and the insincerity of their supposed admiration of him. And when Jessa's presence had been noticed by him as she waited to say her hello, she could tell that a huge weight had been lifted from him, knowing this all too well. The conversation went so quickly that all she caught was the introduction of his name, Marlon Travis, and her telling him that she was called Jessa. Then he was whisked away by Liam, who usually hated when she would talk to any footballer, or any guy in general, really. The way he whisked Marlon away went unnoticed by many in the room. But the party was coming to an end, and many of those who were not footballers, like photographers, designers, models, friends of these types, and journalists, were soon leaving the banquet room inside of Portland FC and heading to the front of the stadium, and only a few stayed behind. If he's here, then you have everything to worry about. One of the good ones, I suspect. She tries to shut the driver's door, but Liam's body is in front of it, so it's just not happening. Will you freaking move? Watch your mouth? He looks over to Tim's car and sees Marlon casually walking over. Liam can tell he's holding himself back from storming over, with the help of Tim, who seems anxious as he flitters from Liam back to Marlon. He bends his neck to lean in and speak to Jessa, who is distressed beyond needing a coffee break from a strenuous day of work. She refuses to look at him. Let me handle this. I haven't seen this young guy since I told him to bugger off without pay. I need you to hang around for now. Then I promise, you can leave for the night. He makes sure her whole being is inside the car before shutting it. But he does this trick and reopens it, grabbing her car keys and quickly shutting it again. Jessa is riled and goes to get them back from him, but calms down when she sees both Marlon and Tim from the rear window now speaking with Liam. What's he doing here? Liam ignores Marlon, who has his eye on Jessa in the car, and he can see that she is observing them with curiosity and distress. The driver's door opens and Jessa gets out. Panicking, Liam turns to give her what for with curse words, but halts when he sees that she's only lighting a cigarette, with her eyes very low. Liam turns back to Tim, still flustered, then gives Marlon a quick passing over before returning an angry gaze to Tim. No welcome back party? How about an apology for the conduct of Portland FC to their players who don't comply with the rules of the management? Marlon stands in front of Tim, forcing him to step back to provide some room. I want an apology.
You and all who was there that night. I could make it easier and have you all transferred to another team. Your pal here who knows that would be in his best interest. Marlon, at the moment, everybody wants to buy you and your value is looking higher than before.
I have my career mapped out, Liam, but I don't need your help to map it out into a gravestone. You want me gone. But those above think I should stay around. So, there was truth in you wanting to sell me?
Tim now comes to the side of Marlon, like this had triggered a need to stand by him. Liam gives him that angry glare again. It's quick, and it burns into Tim, who shifts uneasily. The bulldog shifted. Marlon caught it, then catches the lying glare that Liam always displays after the angry one disperses. I'll say what I said to Tim here. If you want to continue playing for Portland FC, you have to forget what you saw. And it's as simple as that. I can't stop you coming back to training next week, but I can see that your time here won't be easy. Marlon looks behind at Jessa, who is observing him more than either Tim or Liam. What about her? The chin directs Liam back to his view of Jessa, who is now walking in circles and stopping for small pulls and puffs. She dabs her cig, then does the thinking walk again. Jessa is my problem, not yours. Marlon can hear the jealousy, the sound of entitlement that he often hears from certain players regarding that one woman who stands out among the rest. Yet, these ladies, and in rare cases men, speak of that very same player as something they can spit out and chew up whenever they like. Liam has it bad. Tim nudges Marlon to follow him, but Marlon holds back and watches Liam with Jessa. the power she exerts by brushing him off, then pushing him away as he dictates his commands in her ears, while she smokes and ignores him at the same time. He swirls around her, leaving her dizzy, and at one point she held the lit cigarette up and threatened to stub it out onto the side of his neck. He flinches back to protect himself, but Marlon knows that this is what gets him off about her. "Let's go inside and speak to some of the players. Leave them be," Tim says while watching Jessa and Liam continue to argue, his focus then turning to Marlon, who seems lost in their argument. I think his burning obsession over her comes from the fact that she won't sleep with him. He's wild for her, and she is disinterested as hell. What do you know about Jessa? He hears the car slam shut. Liam bangs the driver window and kicks the outside door. She shouldn't have seen what she saw. She was the only female there that night who had the decency to slip out and get away. I suppose her loyalty to this is on the outside, much like yours. You were the only two to slip out because you couldn't hack it. Marlon remembers doing that, but along with Tim, has to move out the way just in time when Jessa puts the car in reverse, with no indication but a hasty, "Move out the way." She backs up, whether they hear her or not. Tim leaps to the side and Marlon does the same as the Benz backs into the middle of them, with Tim having to hop backward as she backs up until she has enough space to drive off, causing Marlon to leap again. Liam stares after the Benz and runs his hands through his slickly combed back hair as they each watch the Benz take a right past the fence, the car visible now in between its thin slits. "There's no controlling that girl." "No shit. You want to control a girl like that, you're going to need more than a big bank balance." Marlon hasn't said this about any girl, but he can sense that Jessa is more than just the face that magazines love to exploit. There's a personality there. Liam comes up into Marlon's face and shoves him back. "Quit blabbing on about Jessa. I saw the way you looked at her that night, and you did it again, today." Marlon doesn't retaliate. It's his manager, and it wouldn't be very wise at this stage. Tim's got his hands out, but needing to restrain him helps with that thought. And there are bigger fish to fry. He lets Liam walk off in a huff, grousing, "I want to see you both in my office." He kicks an empty Coke can, then stomps on it, with Tim and Marlon both hearing the crunch as he crushes it underneath his feet, then stomps on it some more. For Liam, it was a fairly typical display of frustration. Liam is always either slapping the stand when a match is on, and somebody misses the back of the net, or restraining himself from walking up to an opposing player and kicking him in the shins and ripping off his full-grown nuts. It's comical, but Marlon knows that his teammates have grown more than weary of his treatment and attitude towards them. In the dressing room, Marlon remembers a time when, to get his point across, Liam took an empty Sprite bottle and chucked it into the bin, then took the bin and poured all the contents out, and wanted everybody to focus on that Sprite bottle, now covered in bits of soggy food and greasy chips, to display that our football was garbage. Then he stomped on the Sprite bottle to finish off the dramatization. That story had made its way into many football papers, and nobody has ever come clean on who sold it. A few names were spilled, but it was only rumor and wild guesses. Since then, Liam has been more cautious with his outbursts, but last month has seen a rise in this behavior. When Marlon and Tim make their way inside Portland FC, they see a bundle of fans outside the club getting signatures on their t-shirts and their fan books, which look like large checkbooks. If anybody ever had the audacity to present a checkbook to Marlon and expect him to sign a check, he probably would. Just because that level of bullishness comes but occasionally, and it would leave him hollering for days. A few from the bundle of young lads and their fathers spot Marlon and run to him with such enthusiasm that he wishes he could return it. Right now, all Marlon experiences from their admiration are muddled yells, contaminated with excitement that comes out as, "How are you doing, Marlon? Can you sign my book?" They're in his face hollering, and some even ask, "When you back on the field? Did I hear it's next week? Congrats on being shortlisted for the Golden Boot?" Marlon borrows a pen from Tim, who has his own share of adoring fans to sign for. They wave them in the air, and more fans come inside the Portland FC main gates. Some Marlon has seen before, some new faces, some old fans, and some who just happen to be dragged here because they have no choice. Marlon greets them all equally. Some try to shake his hand and he lets them. It isn't that bad, but his mood could be better. A gap through the crowd reveals Liam watching him, with Brian, the head coach, observing both he and Tim, then walking inside with Liam following. Marlon looks to Tim, who is currently speaking to a teenage boy with others listening with such interest that a bomb could drop, and they'd turn to it for a moment, then get straight back to Tim's conversation. Marlon ruffles a few small heads of hair. The younger boys like that. He signs his surname on 2 footballs, shakes a few of the father's hands, then pushes politely through the crowd to go inside. When he turns, he sees Tim giving a departing wave, and the fans very appreciative of it all. A few Portland players go up to them, like Steven, Taylor, Marcus, and Johnny. They've always been good with signings and are appearing generally grateful to be loved. They give Marlon a glance as they walk past him. They don't smile, form a small grin, or even shift their face into something to be construed as friendliness. They just pass him and carry on towards the new set of fans who can be heard once again asking questions. Marlon barely gives it a second thought, but when Tim receives the same treatment, he seems affected by it. What's their problem? He catches up to Marlon, and they continue inside together. Maybe we're being singled out? Marlon stops. Before we go in there, tell me this. Why is it that he wants to transfer you? In your opinion? In my opinion, Tim holds one of the double doors open to the inside of the stadium. He can't control me, not in the same way that he controls them. Both Tim and Marlon look to the players who do seem occupied and far from themselves. The fans are oblivious and full of glee to notice anything out of the ordinary with them. I honestly feel like skipping out on this and going to a bar or something. What more can he say that he hasn't said already? Good point. But then again, our careers are based here for the time being. Tim pauses. Oh, and tomorrow is an inspection. And when I say inspection, I don't mean an ordinary one. Oh. Marlon sees that a few employees want to pass, so gives a soft tug on Tim's Formula One jacket. The 2 females walk past and give Marlon a smile with their eyes, and then a visual of their white teeth, all in line and looking good. He gives a friendly wink and a side grin, and only one of them keeps his gaze. It's the shorter one with the chubby cheeks and oval face. She seems sprightly and good-natured. There's a feeling of her being in his league if she didn't have the money kind of attraction for him. She wears light makeup and dresses well in her heels, adding height and some length to those legs of hers that are chunky but not overly thick.
Marlon goes over to her, which makes her call out to her friend to stop, gets closer, and sees that she has nice eyes. They're wider spread across her face, and it adds age. He would guess she's in her mid-20s, and when he asks for her number, she gives it with her age, too. Not usual, but he likes the confidence of knowing she's 23 years old and works in hospitality. He probably won't marry them, and he feels like asked for that.
When he walks back to Tim, he sees that look. You guys forget that those models, half the time ain't all that. He thinks Tim will provide a rebuttal to this with his wise-ass remarks on the models or hot girls that he's dated, as he knows the shallowness is there. Or at least he's always figured Tim to be this way. I think she was pretty. I prefer girls that are easy on the eye and not hard to talk to. They both go inside. Teresa was none of those things, and yet you were dating her for how many months?
They both say hi to the male's receptionist who sits on the information desk sign visitors. Other rooms on the lower level include the trophy cabinet room, which has
These side entrances are open on match days and lead to the outside seating for the fans. The players and coaching staff are the only To get to the upper level, they have to walk past the reception desk and either take the stairs or the elevator.
Teresa might have been a lot of work, but she's misunderstood. Are you taking the elevator? Tim says this because he sees Marlon passing the elevator and heading to the door with the letter A, marked in white paint on the side, signifying level A. Nah, I'll walk up. I could use the exercise. Marlon pushes open the door and it shuts. He then makes his way up the first 15 steps and waits. He gives it about 3 minutes and then goes back down the same set of 15 steps. Then he makes his way to the basement level, where the fans usually pass through to get to the segregated seating that is numbered with a letter beside it. The process makes it easier for ticket buyers to find their stand and rouse. He came through here that night, when Liam, who was slightly intoxicated, led him and a small huddle of other players, without consciously knowing that he was going to the wrong place. Marlon knows where it is now as he retraces the steps. He thinks back to there being 8 of them, including a few neighboring players from other clubs who often partied with Portland FC when they could. It was Marlon's celebration, and he didn't care who showed that night. He just wanted to have a good time and get wasted after doing so well for his club and ungrateful manager. He counts the stands as he walks by to recall where the turn was: 1A, B, C, D. Then he reaches 2A, B, C, D, and thinks of the thousands of fans that go up those flight of stairs and have to find their row with the help of a Portland employee. He'd never actually been in the position of a fan watching the footy match from their point of view. Marlon gets to 3B, and it was here that a reserved Portland player and hospitality worker were caught making out quite passionately. Liam shooed them away to the leers of the guys who were jokingly mocking him and her, but the pair joined in and were pretty much out of it, having gotten too much free booze into their system. Then Liam took them a little further, maybe 2 or 3 yards down, then stopped at a gray door with the sign that read, "Private entry only." It should be staff only, but it's usually maintenance work that goes on down here for the stadium. Or so they thought. Marlon stops here now and contemplates going inside. It was here that they all entered, in good spirits and on a positive high. You came back too? Marlon was about to go in. He worked himself up enough to push that chunky gray door and breathe in the various smells of dirty leaking pipes and the sounds of gas and malfunctioning pipework that needs some attention. Marlon figured that there might even be a large boiler somewhere. It was noisy, even from the outside. Anyway, the voice that stopped him from going in was Jessa. Are you a sucker for experiencing things more than once? Marlon has his palm on the gray door, like he still wants to push it open and go in. I can ask you the same thing. I thought you left, he said. I just wanted to get away from Liam. So I parked on a neighboring street and made my way back here through the side entrance. It's not hard to get past security and keep them quiet once you tell them you can get them free tickets to the next game. Marlon keeps his hand there. Should we go in? I don't know. I feel like my intestines are wrapping themselves around my gut. The knot is tighter than ever. Jessa holds her arms over her stomach. How does it make you feel, being back here again? Honestly, I don't feel much. Marlon sees Jessa tighten her arms around her stomach even firmer. That makes you uncomfortable? It makes you like the rest of them, cold and heartless. A bunch of rich twats with no balls in those $500 boxers that are a waste of time buying when you can get a decent pair that looks exactly the same for less. I don't understand any of you in this situation. And yet, you were one of them who left the room as soon as you saw what went down. She turns to leave. Marlon thinks to stop her. He wants to. But he watches the gap between them grow bigger and bigger until she takes a turn and heads to one of the exits. Marlon lied because he had to do it for his own sanity. It's really scrambled up his life, given him a harder turtle shell than he had before, and has even caused him to question his love for the sport. But yet, he can't tear himself away from it. It's a super glue of a situation. He both loathes and admires Liam. They all do. He's a tactician with brains. He puts you in a position, then drives you down into the ground until you're the new root that sprouts into a tree with a few golden apples falling from your branch. He did it with him. And now, Marlon's phone rings, interrupting his entrance through the gray doors once again. He answers it. "You need to get up here now? Where are you?" It's Tim. Marlon thinks about this newfound friend, one who he has never seen eye to eye with. It's funny that in the blink of an eye the pair form an unsporting bond that will have to do. Is it out of fear of being iced out that he clings on to Marlon? But there could be hope that he wants to do things the right way. "Hey, you there? Liam is asking where you are, and I truly have no idea, so I can't lie for you. Unless you want me to? But it's a bad idea. You should come. Tell him to give me 20 minutes. I'm on my way up." "Okay." Marlon speculates on why Tim doesn't hang up. His drawn-out breaths can be heard on the phone. "If you happen to be, down there, I reckon you should leave right this instant." He then hangs up, and Marlon does exactly as he says, taking the exact same route back because he knows the usual entrance that most take is through the side of the stands, as it's the easiest way. But you never know. Marlon knows they'll take the lift, so when he reaches the stairs 10 minutes later after leaving from the lowest level, he dashes up the steps and is correct as he hears the ding, and then the opening of the elevator doors as they come. Then their chattering and footsteps continue down as he goes up, just barely missing them. Liam's office is on the 3rd floor, level C. It's rare to have a meeting here with him, as most business is conducted on the football pitch during training, or otherwise in the changing rooms. It takes Marlon 50 steps, then a few more to get there. His fitness level is up to scratch, as the wheezing doesn't knock him off his feet. He gives himself a minute, then goes to push through the door that conveniently says push, and is bumped into. "Hey!" Marlon has to stop the guy as he looks to dart down the stairs without an apology. The guy stops abruptly and gives him a stern brow, then does a double take and slowly makes his way up the stairs until he and Marlon are seeing each other in full, his face still stern. "You should have stayed suspended. To me, that's no great loss. I think that your reasons for wanting me to stay away from Portland is that you have just as much to lose as everybody else, Robum." Marlon can't stand the prick. Of all the guys that deserve to be dropped into the water with stones to help them sink faster, he would be one of them. But the stones don't deserve that. They shouldn't have to help bring a carcass like that to the depths. How do we even play together? Marlon can barely keep eye contact with such waste, and Robum feels the exact same way about Marlon. One of us has to go, and at this rate, I don't think it will be me. He turns to go back down the stairs, just as Marlon bids him a screw you, then carries on to Liam's office. When he gets there, he can see why Robum was in such a hasty hurry to leave. Chapter 8. Here he is, the #1 goal scorer for Portland FC. The man stands by the side of Liam's desk, dressed in a fitted suit from head to toe. The suit is black, noir black to be specific, and styled like he's grown into it over the years. Unlike many other men who seem out of place in their suits. His frame isn't big. He's more of a slimly toned man with an obvious South African accent and Americanized twang. He has on black shades with silver rims. Designers, but still not overly expensive, or even a brand that Marlon knows. There are 2 others dressed like him in the room and sitting down before him. Their suits are navy and gray. One looking better in his suit, a black man with a clean-cut hairstyle and no room for a smile. The other is lighter, he's older, and either European, Russian, or maybe Polish-looking. Marlon sits next to Tim, who is engulfed in his own part of the room, like it's his lone claim to safety. Now that Marlon is here, his head seems to find that string it needs to bring itself to face what he's tied up in. Marlon wants to lower his gaze from Liam, who seems smug now, and very comfortable with the flashy heavies in the room. The only man standing applauds. When he finishes, he removes his shades and places them in his side pocket. Liam gets up to offer his seat, but the man refuses, and with a slight pat on the shoulder, gestures for him to sit down and relax. Marlon finds Liam's office so claustrophobic right now, it's not the grandest. Besides the 3-level fountain in the middle that drops down and drains at the bottom, there's nothing much else to it. Photographs of Liam with players he's signed both past and present adorn the space. Marlon having joined it a few years ago and was there looking as youthful and fresh as a Wander kid. The largest photograph is behind his desk and blown up to a large-scale size depicting the entire Portland team lifting the trophy on that occasion 2 years ago. The team looks thoroughly ecstatic. Liam sees himself kissing the trophy with others doing the same in sheer delight. Good times, good times. The wall is basic and painted in the Portland shirt colors of black and gold. Beneath his desk was a very comfortable carpet, and yet the room could still do with a fixer-upper, just to spruce it up and give it some va-va-va-voom, just like the advertisement sells it. The man gives Marlon a smile that unsettles him. It's the way he does it. That made it uncomfortable. Like he needs to strain the mucus and all the unsavoriness to be able to form that shape on his lips. He's a strange-looking man to boot. His face isn't bruised, but it's dark under his eyes, and his eyes are naturally puffy-looking. Nothing he can do about that, but he looks both tired and beaten to a pulp. The suit adds some improvement, but not much. Marlon Travis, as the day is long. I can't believe I'm here speaking to you after so many rumors have come the club's way. Can you imagine the stories that are being brought up here? Talk of... He looks to Liam, who gulps, then tries to return an unbothered reaction, or clueless. Marlon can't read Liam's face as it always reads along the lines of either bitter frustration or, I need a beer, please. Marlon could join him on the beer. He's never felt so responsible and venerable in his life. Compared to sleeping with women, this feels like a momentous night, and he can't run from it. Not that running from women is what he does. Nah, he just prefers to be in a position where an expensive lawyer won't be knocking on your door and demanding that you pay your prenup from your 6th marriage. He knows guys who have gone through so many wives that they demand legal and medical review before marriage. His mind wanders to Jessa, then back to this man who still hasn't given him a name. And he must read minds, because he says, My name's Charlton, and these two are my associates, who always do well by me. Daniel is the handsome stallion in the navy suit, and this my Polish accountant, Jakob, not as handsome, but good with his hands. Marlon would usually acquire a little more information, as that told him absolutely nothing about either of them. A dodgy accountant. Okay, he can live with that. And the other, some previous footballer. Yes, Marlon twigged this chap. Didn't your stallion over there play for Westburn? You know your football. Daniel gives him a sarcastic clap, then looks to Charlton and Liam, who are also impressed. I'm retired now, long forgotten too. Were you a fan? I loved your style of play. You were a midfielder and up front, right? That's right. Daniel nods his head in a daze, staring into space for a moment. I was a versatile player, left-footed, partial to the right too. All this football talk. Charlton steps in front of Liam's desk and sits on the edge, but doesn't block Liam's view. We aren't here for that, but time is limited and I'm to send a quick message to you. He stops and then twists his neck to speak to Liam. Where's that pretty model? She should be here. I want her to hear as well. Liam mumbles, Marlon has never seen him so tongue-tied. And Tim either, who's taken aback, but is keeping himself as small as possible. Pretty hard to do with a face so tough and intimidating, though. These are the last that I need to speak with, unless you miscalculated on those who were present that night. Charlton asks this seriously. No, Liam answers with a flash. That's everybody. Daniel and Jakob give him a cold stare, and he repeats his response, clearly trying to hide the obvious intimidation. That's everybody. No hesitation here. All right. Well, get her to come tomorrow night to the inspection. They all need to be there, or else things won't run as smoothly as we hope. He then gets up from the desk, but sits back down on it as he looks to Marlon and Tim. So, boys, I'm sure you're aware and understand our presence here? Marlon and Tim give him a blank expression, like, of course we don't know who the hell you are. But it's lighter on the delivery, as they know they're outnumbered by the men in suits who could be packing. Marlon hears Jakob and Daniel modify the position of their chairs, so they can bring the total to 6 pairs of eyes at the intimidation party. I'll take those clueless stares as a no. Well, we represent those who come with good tidings and a promise to keep your names safe should anything slip out into the open regarding the incident that you think you saw. You a lawyer? Tim asks. I'm a lawyer for the one who wanted me to be here today, yes. Marlon translates that as the dodgy behind who probably doesn't have a certificate or an actual practice. Screws the law, he thinks this is a fine example of what the law represents. I see. Tim retreats back inside himself, and Charlton isn't sure if he's going to have another question. So he transfers his attention to Marlon. Any questions, Marlon? Yeah. You guys were present that night. This churns the lard, and the reactions of Liam, Daniel, Charlton, and Jakob looking to each other with vigilance, like they were communicating through the power of the scared eyeball talk. A few coughs, some itching of their skulls, though barely an itch, because all that money spent on their hair can't be ruined, and then they're back to looking at Tim and Marlon, the lone footy players. So, you can identify us then? Charlton's South African accent makes this confusing, but it comes out in an understandable sentence. Where would you sell that information? I have my sources. Would that source happen to be an untrustworthy journalist? Charlton has the same haughty grin and chuckles when Marlon's silence reveals the answer that he sought. Benjamin might keep your name in the footy headlines, as his paper truly does gain the most readers who commute about each day. But you must understand that he is fueled by money, and that means he can be bought pretty easily. He has no loyalty to you. Marlon knows this and has suspected the weakness of character from day one, but it hasn't hurt to be in the limelight when you find a writer who may be shit in some respects, but has a deep love for it. When it comes to Marlon's social and love life, Benjamin has been a fuck-up, but on the footballing front, he's stuck to the truth, the actual events of the story, without screwing it up or telling a lie. He's stuck to exactly what Marlon has told him. For Marlon, that is enough. I know how Benjamin is, and I don't claim to have his loyalty either, but he'll print your story without tampering with it. Also, something that could easily be bought. If we were to say pin this solely on a player of your caliber, it could be done. Not that this is what we intend to do. Far from it. The plan here is to come to an understanding of events. What went down, and what will appear very soon in Benjamin's paper, before any other. The investor you speak of is concerned about this. As you know, there will be talk of 2 missing persons. Marlon's chest tightens for the first time ever. He can sense the heaviness on Tim's end, too. It's the change in his breathing pattern, now rigid and contained. Marlon is doing the same. He tries to let his lungs ease, but they're blocked now. Daniel gets up from the desk and stands where he first did when Marlon entered. Liam speaks now with elbows on the desk. This leads to a few options that you have. I'm speaking to you too, Tim. Robum left here, assuring me that what he saw was nothing more than an accident. I need you two to do the same before we finish here today. I'm not forcing you. We don't believe in violence or anything like that. Liam looks to Charlton for reassurance of this, as there was just a hint of him not being so sure. Charlton gives him a slow head nod. There. You see, nothing violent will be done, and even since you saw the incident, nothing has been done to any of you. You suspended me without pay, Marlon says calmly, behind a thumping heart that wants to vacate its position inside of him. You placed Tim on the transfer list. A few other players have complained about being replaced too. It might not be violence, but you're getting rid of all who were there, one by one. Marlon knows that it's ballsy to speak up like this. But he had to, even if it interferes even more with his return to the game. But like Jessa, who he still pictures clutching herself like a lost girl who could use a hug, it bothers him somewhere inside. He uses that image of her fear to propel him. I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. The conversation was clear. Was it? Daniel speaks this time. Others say they couldn't make out the conversation. Well, they were lying out of fear of reprisal. Marlon's balls are getting bigger. They swell inside his boxers like two chestnuts unable to be broken or cracked. Tim isn't there yet, but Marlon's confidence is giving him a levy in the right direction. His crooked angle is becoming a straight line. The talk was about... Daniel gets up from his seat, and both Marlon and Tim lean back like he's about to piss on them from where he stands. For a guy in a suit, Daniel still has an appeal that you wouldn't mess with. Tim can be like this, but compared to this guy, Marlon knows that Tim would. I'll come straight to the point, Daniel said, interrupting Marlon's thoughts. We can't have you selling that to the papers. He gives Charlton a crooked grin. What can you pay a man who has millions already? Charlton pressed his lips inwards, then looks to Liam, who does the same. Marlon's chest hammers loudly. He'll contain it, he thinks. But these men are being this way because of tomorrow. It has to be that. Something about this conversation reeks of deceit and mockery, and he can't take it. The flakiness that he deals with day to day. And then this. You get a man who has millions in a position where he could lose everything. And when it's not about the money or the women or the bad boy status, then it's about a passion for what he does. Liam says this, now standing up with a signed agreement in his hands. This is your contract, and you know I could make this disappear. I could have you out faster than me bringing in Robum, the promising German, as the next best thing. Marlon gets up like a shot of rum hitting your throat and burning you into existence. I got my lawyer. I signed a 4-year contract and I have 1 more year to go. And that means diddly squat. I could buy you out, sell you to some rundown team, and lower your value and expectancy of play. That's the power of being a manager. Liam hands the contract to Charlton, who gives it a brief look. There's another contract on the table. Tim, as you know, your level of play has been below par as a wingback. He wobbles the contract for him. Yours expires in a few months. A few interested clubs, not many. How old are you? 28? Not as great as you used to be. I can keep you here. I know you love it. The fans, the idea about the growth of the club, the talks of moving to another location, this can all be erased if you two comply. The club's in trouble? Tim says this before Marlon can. In a sense. Liam's half-assed answer wasn't fooling Marlon. The inspection will determine who's down and who's not. He gives Charlton this contract, too. So until tomorrow. Think it all over. Liam looks to Charlton for confirmation to finish the discussion. But he watches Marlon, as Marlon watches him, both sizing each other up. I always figured you as laid back and docile, Charlton says. I was wrong, eh, Daniel? Definitely, Daniel replied, observing every aspect of Marlon's words, body language, and countenance. A talented kid. Chapter 9. The last time a man said that to him was about a month ago, after he'd left with the sight of Jessa way ahead of him and getting into the same Benz. The man was 65 at least, and Marlon had read about him in the Financial Times when he bothered to read it all. He was an investor with a love for everything about Portland FC, but his dealings in the past meant that he often was blacklisted for getting his money through, means that didn't always sit well. But his riches in the oil industry meant that he could buy silence from the toughest judges out there. His last words to Marlon were, I did what I had to do. To save a talented kid like you and Portland FC. Jessa is taking it from behind as the male model who declared his love for her a few moments ago proceeds to do the deed and bring her to a Columbus of a climax. It will never happen. She won't allow it to. Her mind is on everything but laying with someone right now. He pounds and pounds like he's beating the drum, to a beat that only he can enjoy. There is much in it for him, and little to gain from her as he now grabs her and squeezes, leaving it there hoping to hear her moan. Jessa fakes it. Ooh! It sounds too fake, too forced, but it excites him. Jessa can feel her body jerking all over the place. She flings her hair around to add to the momentum and illusion of a good time. Sean is clumsy. He often gets her to move forward a little. Over here, he will tell her, come back a bit, and the one that made her laugh and comes directly from him now is, talk dirty to me. Sean is loving it, but he doesn't love the ringing of her mobile that comes as she tries to extend her hand for it. He draws her arm back and continues to pump water into her system. Jessa likes the teasing of this, so does it again, and wonders what he'll do next. He takes her arm, and this time doesn't let go. Jessa admits that this makes her a little eager for him to continue, but judging by the grunts and distressing hues that come in the form of him squeezing and his face contorting, he's clearly indicating to her that the mountain is falling, and that means he's coming. Jessa realizes that this always happens to her. When she finally gets into it, the dude stops, and she's left with no choice but to finish herself off later. It's good timing when he pulls out and finishes the job. She doesn't watch him do this, not her style of play. She grabs her phone and realizes that she's just got laid in one of Gabriel's photo studios, on one of his precious and pricey carpets. She smiles vindictively, then goes into the room that's on the white background paper and silver soft boxes. It's basically a small room with a few of Gabriel's accessories and personal equipment that he keeps here, alongside access to the small toilet. Jessa goes inside and sits on the loo to check the number. The mirror is located right in front of her. So many others would have had the pleasure to seem themselves lay down a number 1 or 2. Jessa thinks this could be an ideal love spot. She and Sean should have come in here. She can imagine Gabriel bringing one of his boy toys here for a heated session of snap me while I blow you to smithereens. Jessa thinks Gabriel's a twat, but he's a twat who thinks she has potential. She checks her message and ignores her nudity in the rectangular mirror. She even hides her lady garden by crossing her legs, specifically to conceal that part. It's not that she doesn't love her body, but there is a time and a place to ogle your goodies. Jessa goes to text back, but a call interrupts. She checks the number. It's Liam. Oh no, she says to herself and bangs the back of her head against the gray tiles as she contemplates answering. She knows what he will say, and it's that she needs to be there in a few hours. The inspection thing that he'd been hammering on about and getting his knickers in a twist over. They'd all have to go back to the scene, where it all happened. So, the day has dawned, and the rich cat comes out of the litter and willingly shits on them all. Jessa thinks about how Marlon reacted yesterday. His coldness had been what she had tried at first, and it worked. But after a while, it all slowly crept in and tickled her into consistently thinking about the dark side of those with money. She closes her eyes now, still leaning against the cold tiles and letting Marlon come back into her memory. He was there, wasn't he? He stood next to a ghostly white Tim. They were all white, regardless of color, when they saw it. Marlon must have seen the two guys dressed in exquisite suits before any of the others, as Liam brought him in there first. The other footballers gawked at the man who was on his knees, whose name was Eric Stool, and Jessa had seen him on the TV, the news, and had heard him speak on the radio about owning the Portland club for so many years. He loved Portland FC like it was his third testicle, and it couldn't be cut off. The bond he had with the fans was phenomenal, but he had spoken about the club running into bad times. There was a knock on the toilet door, but Jessa still has her mind on Marlon. She remembers he was the only one who had given her eye contact when Eric. Jessa? It's Gabriel banging on the door. Open this door? I forgive you for screwing on my imported rug from Latvia, but I sent that model home. I have some news. He had founded the club and brought it the point where it was booming. Jessa thinks she hears Gabriel. Gabriel? Yes, darling. I have some news. Jessa snaps herself up and unlocks the door. She peeks her head out and sees Gabriel, dressed in a one-piece suit that looks fit for mountaineering. It's a pinkish blue and zips all the way up. Considering the weather is over 30 degrees on most days, she thinks he might as well find somewhere a little colder. Don't worry about my suit. It's a winter range I want to try out. I want to capitalize on the insulated look for those who are more fashion conscious. He twists his waist so she can see the back that bears his G logo, and Jessa gives him a grin to show her approval. It's not bad. Where is my train of thought? Ah, so the news. He tries to force his way into the toilet with a gossip pout and an eagerness to spill it. Jessa shuts him out. I'm naked. Gabriel pushes again. Sweetheart. His face nearly touches hers as she keeps him on the outside. I'm dressed in a pinkish onesie, with a taste for that male model that just left. I think he floats more than just my eyebrows, which I had done a few hours ago, including my nails, which are bright pink. Gabriel, you could be the Z on the asexual scale, and in Jessa terms that means 0% sexuality, but still prone to that 1% that might think touching boobs equals non-sexual because you're gay. I don't want your creeping eyes all over my body and whatever sexuality you embody. She pushes Gabriel back and shuts the door, locking it and returning to sit back on the toilet seat. Tell me what you have to say. Why do I allow you to treat me so inhumanely? I think it's because you're as wild as me after a few drinks and a quick shag. However, I won't push the demon too far. The news I have to bring to you is this. Eric's stool is missing. Chapter 10. It's a small world when you're a footballer with your face on a billboard that you only spot because you gloomily look out of the side of your drawn-down window and see it. All in its glory, staring back at you with a false grin and a hopeful smile, that the millions and millions of viewers who will tune into the new season, which starts soon, will think better of you when they hear you're now losing some of your love for the sport. Marlon's accompanied by 3 other players up there, their grins less pronounced and more serious. Their kits range from yellow, blue, and white, gold, and black, and the final guy, a new player that Marlon hasn't heard of yet, wears his kit colors that are sky blue and yellow. They look like airbrushed pansies. Well-detailed haircuts with the mohawk on the new player standing out more than Marlon's own angel wings on the side of his shaved head. The other 2 have hairstyles that are simply boring, in plain English. Marlon sees Jessa come out from the photo studio. He had dropped off Gabriel, who had come out of an expensive decathlon-type store with a few bags, wearing purple leggings and a silky white shirt with his gold logo on the side. Marlon wanted to leave him be, to drive on towards the stadium and get there early so he wouldn't have to deal with everything but the point at hand. But he found himself parking on the side and winding down the window to tell Gabriel to get in so he could give him a lift to where he needed to go. He thinks back on the conversation. Marlon Travis, right? I think that's your name? The striker who's on that billboard opposite my personal studio. I'm on a billboard opposite your studio? You are. With 3 other young players. I think they're dropping hints at who's on the run-in for the Golden Boot trophy. Gabriel looks at Marlon's car. Oh, honey. But you do look the most dashing. He slaps Marlon playfully on the shoulder through his car window and then makes his way to the back seat. I need to hurry back. Jessa is probably having sex with that model just to spite me for doing that shoot the other day. How was I to know that she and Robum had a tussle? He shuts the door. Marlon snickers. And you're cool with that? Her having sex in your studio? He waits for the passing Mercedes, which stops midway, and lets him come out. She scares me, but no more than any of you footballers and managers. Such a small world to run into you today. Gabriel watches the black Mercedes, then Marlon, as he thanks the lady with the Gucci visors who lingers on Marlon like she recognizes him, but can't put her finger on it. Something clicks. The fashion news, yes? Oh, Marlon, did you hear? Hear what? That Eric's stool is missing. When Marlon heard this, he nearly drove through the red light and into a car that was coming from the left that could use the insurance, so wouldn't mind crashing anyway. Gabriel couldn't even find a name for the vehicle, even with the brand marked on the back saying Volvo. The car horns from various drivers blared Marlon back into the existing situation, one that was noisier than Gabriel had ever heard, as his mouth hung open at the mini carnage that Marlon had caused. Marlon didn't hang around to put things right. So, when the owner came out the car, not intimidated by the orange-tinted Nissan and its chrome design with customized silver wheels, Marlon drives past him, gives him an apology that comes from his gut, and then speeds away, leaving the man open-mouthed when he recognized him as Marlon Travis. He knows who you are. Gabriel fully turns around to chuckle at this. And I'm sure he'll have a story or two to tell about this incident when he gets home. Marlon checks the rear window and can see the man pointing in the direction of his Nissan before giving up on the star-studded identification and returning to his car. The sound of a few drivers growing impatient with his trance got his attention. Being well-known always has its perks. He then adjusts the rearview mirror again to face Gabriel. Eric's stool is missing? He wants to see his eyes. That's what he needs as he searches for this answer. Gabriel crosses his skinny legs as he checks his face. That nearly messed up my makeup. He shuts the mirror case, then looks at him, but doesn't notice Marlon's intentional reading of him. Yes. You know how fashion likes to announce the rich in all areas. That nice man. Your club owner has gone missing. I thought you would have heard. Marlon painfully gulps and keeps his wandering eyes on the road. It must have slipped. Who reported him missing? His eyes fall back onto Gabriel. His wife. She wasn't convinced with the text that he sent her about getting away to the Caribbean for a business trip. She said that with Portland FC starting the league soon, he would want to be around. And that makes sense. She sent somebody to check the registered hotel where he was staying. And although he had checked in, there had been no sighting of him, ever. Not by the staff, or any other business associates that have heard of him. Marlon tears himself from Gabriel, who catches him. I can understand why you're upset. I'm not upset, he said, hoping the studio is near. Is it a left here? The closure is needed. He could do with a shag. A woman, that chubby but pretty woman, has been texting. Why not drop him off and say fuck it to Liam and that stupid inspection? Why not drive away to the Bahamas and never come back? Yes, a left here. The rest of the journey is Gabriel talking and Marlon not listening. The conversation drifts from Eric to Liam, then Philippe, who he considers his competition, as the many wags who turn to him should choose him instead, as he is more into the high end of fashion instead of the lowbrow fabrics that Philippe meddles with. Marlon catches bits of his icy talk, as Gabriel has always been one to enjoy the sound of his own voice and the look of himself in his mirror case. The listener has the luxury of bearing the burden of partaking in gossip that could be about too. Philip and Gabriel have one thing in common, even if they hate each other's guts. It's that the gay end of the stick burns between them, and so does the other end that's as prickly as the nose that points itself into everybody's business. And nobody will say anything to them because they're rich pricks, not the kind of cheap ones. Marlon has respect. But they can do and say what they please, and still be invited to the main ball. Marlon stops the recollection there as he nearly loses sight of a swift-moving Jessa in an outfit that says she wants to keep herself inconspicuous with the shades, twister peak hat, the type that covers her forehead, and the outfit, that's a plain and long jacket zipped all the way up. Marlon gets out the car to quickly get her attention. He reaches her before she makes that turn down a one-way road. "Jessa?" He lays his hand on her shoulder, and she jumps, but doesn't seem overly startled by him. She settles when she recognizes Marlon's face. "You." That's all she says. Like seeing him isn't what she overtly wanted. "Me." Marlon is kind of downtrodden by that, but he can't blame the apprehension in her body language. "Do you need a ride?" "Why do you assume that I'm going there?" "Closure. It's the only thing that's bringing me back there. And the fact that it means they must have done it. Do you know he's missing?" Marlon is finding that he's cautious with Jessa as her reaction mirrors his. They both look to each other's feet. Then to the elderly couple who nearly bump into them, but force them to move out the way. The old man apologizes, and Jessa gives him a friendly enough smile to satisfy the sincere apology. "I heard." She still smiles at the man as he waves her goodbye. "And I know exactly what I'm going to do about it. 1 month." She folds her arms like she's cold. 1 month of feeling like the weakest link. All this success. And you know what? It makes sense now. Why I've been getting responses back from my portfolio. Why designers are putting up with diva ways. It all makes sense. Not to Marlon, it doesn't. "We should head over there and wait in the parking lot or something." "You listening to what I'm saying?" Jessa tears off the shades from her face to ask Marlon the same question again, but slows it down sarcastically. "Are you listening to what I'm saying?" Marlon gives her a sarcastic nod, wide-eyed. Jessa brushes past him and looks both ways before deciding that it's safe enough to cross the road. He sees where she's heading to as she screams across the street and points up to him at the billboard. "You might look good up there, but to get that award..." She quickly darts back across, having to raise her hand for a driver to give her right of way. Marlon heads back to his Nissan, and Jessa trails after him. "Admit it." Marlon unlocks his car with his key. "I want them to admit to what they did." He opens the driver's door and gets in, but doesn't close it as Jessa stands at the side of him. "Trust me. That feeling of a sudden boost in my career has hit me ever since shit hit the fan. But I ain't about to lay that all on the table when I have talent." Marlon shuts his door. Harder than he had wanted to. Jessa makes her way to the other side of the car. She opens it and gets in, but has to wait to shut it properly as a car drives by. "You are talented," she said, shutting it properly now. "I wanted to be one of the many models to get your attention that night and let you know that." One of the only true models that wanted to get my attention. There's a pause between them. A plug and socket, with Marlon being the plug and Jessa the socket. She might be an ally here, Marlon thinks. A person who he could, God forbid, bond with on some level. "I just felt your presence when you came over. Like..." He rests both his hands on his steering wheel. "Like a real woman had come to speak with me. Not these plastic stick figures." "No offense, of course?" Jessa cracks open a can opener smile. "No. I like the admiration from models. I think they see me as a little more than a bad boy. I have a heart. We shall see. I didn't see that the other day." Jessa pulls on her seatbelt. "You were so cold." "And so were you. I just deal with things in the best way that I know how." Marlon puts his key into the ignition, but Jessa stops him from starting the car by resting her hands on him. "I was at your level of admittance. It took me a while to come to terms with the fact that a man might have been killed." Jessa says this, and her hands that had some blood pumping through them now go cold upon Marlon's own. A part of him wants to grab them and give her warmth, but he knows that his own have gone cold and are now in no condition to offer any solace. "I spell it like K-L-L-E-D. Marlon brushes her hands off. His own are cold. He finds the whole car has a chill, and when he starts it, he puts on the heat to warm them up. "Thanks. It was turning into winter. It's going to be even colder when we reach Portland FC." Marlon turns to Jessa. I have your back, and I never say that to anybody because they never deserve it. It's a lonely world out there when you have money and women so freely at your disposal. People don't realize that. Marlon blinks sadly at the emotional baggage behind that. I haven't come across somebody like you in a long time. I can't say the same for you. I hope you understand. I do. I need to prove that I'll do the right thing. It's just not going to be easy to do it. Chapter 11. A few supercharged and fast cars litter the Portland FC parking lot. Marlon knows Tim's BMW and Robum's Lotus that looks like it's about to transform into Bumblebee. There's Liam's Honda NSX that's as pretty as Marlon's Nissan, and a few other sporting babies that must turn knickers in a twist and sling them right off. It's an expensive sight, and of course it attracts a small crowd who want to see whose car belongs to who, as they peer through the brick fence and black railing. They don't bang on Marlon's window when he arrives. But they stick their faces in the back, front, and even at the side of Jessa's window, which frightens her. Especially when a small head pops up and shouts, "She's really pretty, Marlon." A cruder phrase used was, "Is that Marlon Travis with a new squeeze?" With the reply being, "She's hot as hell." Jessa kept her face straight, but Marlon found this to be a huge compliment for her. He parks in between the NXS and BMW. It's like space was just left there for him to park in. There should be more footballers' cars here. They're short a few. Marlon notices this as he parks into position. Maybe they've already told Liam and company what they wanted to hear. I know that some of these guys want to continue playing pretty bad, so saying yes to all their demands would be nothing. And what about you? Do you want to continue playing for Portland after all this? Jessa unbuckles her seatbelt. Marlon loves Portland, and when he looks at that stadium that the fans often tweet is the best in the world, he loves it just a little bit more. He looks to the stadium's grand scale. It's crafted my skill. He gets lost in his survey and memory. When you ask a player that question, remember that a true footballer who is loyal to his club will always have a wet tongue. I have a wet tongue for Portland. I'm trying to make it dry. But even with it needing repairs, I still love it. Jessa puts her shades back on. Then just forget all about Eric. Jessa exits Marlon's car roughly and is closely followed by Marlon, who doesn't want her to get away. Relax. There's still hope that nothing sinister has happened. Jessa's shoulders rise and drop as an exhausted gust of air escapes from her. We know nothing about each other. Well, I know very little about you. I know what image they give you, how they want your fans to see you. Marlon finds that he can now hear the muffled chants of Portland FC and security, making sure that this time they stay outside the gate and keep their hands to themselves as two more cars come through the gate. Jessa hears them. Anybody you know? Marcus and Johnny. They change cars so often that it becomes like their new underwear choice. Marcus has a Jaguar F-Type, and Johnny has a GT Bentley. When the pair of them find parking spaces, settle their rides, and then finally exit the cars, they look to Marlon and Jessa, and then each other, before walking to the side entrance of the stadium. Marlon hears the fans scream for Johnny, the right and left midfielder. He's a mousy figure of a player, but his scrawny legs can move even though they lack length. Marlon got on with him when a drink was in the way. They had a taste in women that fell beyond just a great pair of designer boots. He liked women who had an IQ that matched his own. Johnny's wasn't that high in Marlon's opinion. But he was a semi-intelligent player. Marcus was unusual, tall, a good midfielder who passed the ball well and made options available for the front players. He was a Russian player with bushier eyebrows than even George Bush. Whitely blonde hair, and clear grayish eyes behind small slits that rarely blinked or otherwise showed his emotions, on the pitch or in training. Marlon knew that both these players were not even 25 years old yet, and judging by their behavior, It was stress that prompted this rudeness. He wouldn't regard any of these players as acquaintances, but right now they all seemed to be fishing in the same dirty pond, reeling in plastic and excess waste. I actually want to stay out here. Jessa holds back as Marlon takes steps to go into the stadium. Those are your people? I don't see why I have to get involved. Those guys aren't my people. I play for this team, but I keep to myself. It makes shit hard on the field, but it's a working relationship and nothing more. Marlon heads on in. He thinks that if she wants to stay out here, then let her. Jessa is getting underneath his skin, and she's doing a good job of making him fess up to things. Touchy, aren't you? They paint as you this hard ass. Do you know that I know Benjamin? Marlon makes sure that she can't catch up. She's following, though. He didn't think she would. Every model that fucks footballers knows Benjamin. There was no implication to him implying that her knowing Benjamin is because of that, but Marlon shrugs it off invisibly. Then he shouldn't know me, because I hate footballers and their lifestyles. It makes me cringe at your arrogance. Marlon's heard that before. Models can be worse. The ones you go for. You haven't met me. Jessa says this with pride. I know my shit on you, too. Marlon slows down, and Jessa catches up to the side of him as they near the double door to the inside. She turns to him, with doe eyes that a German shepherd would give its owner when it is innocent. He stares into her eyes, and she back into his. What do they both deduct? It doesn't stop them from their pace to the door as they stay locked on the other. It wasn't until they reached the two security men at the double doors, who weren't there when they drove in, that Jessa gets in front of him and stops him with her palm. Tell me? I'm dying to know what you read about me in the paper, and then I'll enlighten you to more about yourself. Are you going in? The security guard with no hair, a bland face, and a yellow safety jacket holds the door for Jessa. Marlon knows it isn't for him. Thank you. Jessa walks in, but the security guard stops Marlon politely. Sorry, Travis. Another Benjamin who uses his last name, something Marlon loathes. I've been told to search you. You didn't search the other two that went in. Marlon hadn't actually seen that, but wanted to test his theory. No, we only just got here. Figures. Marlon spreads for them as they aren't bullshitting about having to do their job. The security guy gives him a quick tap from jacket pocket to jeans pocket, and then trails down the right leg of his jeans, and then onto the left, patting the inside of his legs and trying not to violate Marlon any more than he already feels. You're clear. Marlon congratulates him on that verdict. Do you want to check my boxers too? I could be hiding anything inside there. The only weapon that he ever brandished from there was his floppy gun. The security guard grimaces within, and his body shudders. Marlon has to leave him with that. He was an inch away from touching one of his balls, and that's no joke of a card. He goes in and hears the voice of a stressed manager, aka Liam. He's chasing after Jessa, who's heading down the stairway. Marlon keeps a steady distance as Liam senses him and gives him the nastiest look he can rummage through. This one was used on an opposing manager who called him a wasted testicle at a press conference. It was the funniest thing that Marlon had found that phrase to be so accurate with Liam. He was a long john testicle in every way, hanging on to whatever he could. Marlon scoffs when he transfigures Liam into a giant testicle. Liam hears this and turns to him, taking it as a dig at his efforts with Jenna. Stay out of this? Hey, I'm only here because you made me attend. I'm not getting into it with you and Jenna. She got out your car. Yes, I did. Jenna comes storming back and uses all her fingers to poke the tactical genius in his forehead. Never has Liam looked so small in the presence of a woman. Marlon finds Jenna even more attractive after doing that. Hold up, Marlon thinks. Did I find her attractive before? He really looks at her this time. He zones back to her the words of Jenna. I got out of his car. And you know why I did? Marlon wants to hear this from her. He usually finds that the reason is that it's such a beauty of a ride. Because he convinced me to show my face here. And nobody, and I mean nobody, ever makes me do that. Marlon can feel his neck on the slab. Liam hasn't got a reply for that one. No stutter, no murmur. Just a vacant and weary face left speechless by more than just words. He shimmies past her and makes his way down the stairs to the gray double doors. If that was a pin drop accompanied by a heart smash, then Marlon witnessed it right there. Guy was hurt, like heartbroken, kind of hurt. I hope he gets the message now. Jenna now goes to head down the stairs. Did you mean what you said? Marlon was speculating at his hidden enthusiasm while he joins her to walk down. It freaked me out, but yeah, I meant what I said. About me? Marlon was having to make sure that she gets his question, as it's not every day that a model speaks so highly of him and means it. Jessa holds on to the top of the stair rail. What did I say about you? Ouch, or damn, would be the closest translation to how Jessa sounded when she said that. It had the undertones of, oh honey, don't read too much into anything I say. I was just proving a point. It was the way she gazed at him, probably regarding this as no more than what he would say to an average model on any other day. I had to say something to get Liam off my back. The prediction was right then. Jessa takes a step down. And besides, if I did mean it, what would that even suggest? That I somehow kind of think you would be okay to have a drink with? Marlon feels there is a time and a place and a moment. But the fact that she came to that conclusion when his mind was on something else settled the pig in the sky notion. She was flying way too high over the moon there. Marlon feels a little freaked out by it all, and he lets Jessa go ahead as he takes his time to think of the unfolding events. One, when they go down there, who knows what's going to go down, or up, or off, or slam you into the wall and break your nose, because even if you're a top player, we can replace you just like we probably did to Eric. And you have the funds to get that nose fixed anyway. If they can do that shit to a billionaire, but wait. There is still hope that he'll be down there, and it was all a bad nightmare. It speeds him down the steps, that little spring in the leg ointment that was needed. He was getting stiff. He can see Jessa stiffening as they near the last 20 steps as well. Then they will have to push through the door that leads to the ground level. It comes into Marlon's sight, ground level marked on the side, with a fire extinguisher beneath it that has never been used. There's also a mini-map that gives a floor plan of the seat rows that is mapped out in an oval circle. The map also includes toilets, staff rooms, attached food stands, and numerous exits, 4 in total. Marlon sees where Liam and company would be on this map. Jessa takes a look too. It would have been missed by most, as only ones who would be concerned with what happens in there would be signed-in maintenance, plumbers, builders, and those who have to upkeep the general checks of the stadium. Getting access to the room requires permission, as Jessa and Marlon make their way to the gray room, which now starts to come across as the execution parlor, because inside there were leaky pipes, with dried damp patches splattered onto the gravel floor. The sounds of manufacturing cables, gas, water, and the whole shah-bang going on down there, it made the whole atmosphere seem like a type of functioning booby trap, just waiting to collapse upon them. Marlon and Jessa can hear the hiss of a gassy pipe, which means they are coming nearer to the room. They also hear voices, muffled not, but becoming clearer and clearer as they pass an arrow that leads to row 3 and beyond. It's just around the corner now, and Jessa catches a glimpse of a man she doesn't know, but Marlon recalls the name as Charlton. He's with Daniel, dressed in the same suits they had on yesterday. Jakob is missing this time, and that's no sore loss for Marlon, who can see a few of his teammates here, those being Johnny, Marcus, Tim, and Robum. They all convey the same vacant appearance, from their body language to the way that they each huddle apart from the other. Even in their expensive jeans, buttoned-up jackets, and authentic leather, and even more worn by Robum, who has to always be extra flashy when he steps out. Marlon now sees each man as nothing more than an average male. Their actions were below average, and he must add himself to that list. Charlton greets him with a wily smile, and Jessa with even less enthusiasm. Daniel seems to have no luster for his presence either, and Liam looks like he's had enough altogether. A distance in his eyes that comes when he's lost the match, or is dealing with an injured player who was carrying the team to victory. It's that same look he has for both Jessa and Marlon. Jessa is doing that hugging herself and rubbing her arms thing. It's warm down here, but Marlon can understand why she must feel so cold. You two are the last we're waiting for. The other players have made up their minds and don't need to be coerced any further. I won't use coerced. But we've come to an agreement that will keep them happy at this club for the future. Charlton looks to Marlon, then Tim, then everybody else, except for Liam. We hope to replay the confrontation for you guys to fully understand. He pauses. Let's go in. Chapter 12. Daniel and Charlton have pristine memories, displayed when they get the players to stand in the exact same position they were in on that day. Marlon and Jessa stick close. Marlon was in front of her, and she was a couple of steps behind, looking over his shoulder. Tim stays close-ish, and was standing on the right side of Marlon. He sticks closer this time, and Marlon can't help but think with all that toughness, why can't he overpower these rich pricks? And yet, he looks the picture of cat jelly. He could be fed to those felines for dinner. Marcus, Johnny, and Robum complete the half circle as each faced the point they could see when they walked in and saw Eric's stool on the floor. Charlton and Daniel stand before them, side by side with a damp smugness that accompanies the smell of the room. It's so warm that each takes their jacket off and holds it in their hands. Liam is the only one dressed in a tight shirt and straight-cut trousers that could use an ironing with all those creases. They're not cheap, but they need some help. Liam looks rough since the last conversation he had with Jessa. So this is where it happened. Charlton spreads his hand to the middle of the spot that is directly under the main light bulb in the room. It's off now, but each can still see perfectly fine. Am I right? Charlton looks to each player, one by one waiting for him to give some gesture to where they saw Eric kneeled over with pure terror on his face. Robum nods with enthusiasm. Marcus strains his mouth like he wants to say yes, and then diverts his gaze. Johnny blinks so much that he has to stop, then give a small nod and blinks again. And Marlon, he just stares at the spot, like Eric is right there and asking to be saved. When he lands on Jessa, who's slightly harder to see as Marlon almost blocks her out of sight, he asks her to come forward. Jessa, come forward, please. Charlton comes across like God, or more so a priest who wants to feed the communion wafer into her mouth for deliverance. Jessa ignores him anyway, so he asks her again with more fire in his rod. Jessa, I need you to come forward. He pokes it in this time. Marlon rotates his neck to look at her. He then mouths, It's okay. Jessa believes him. He can tell that she does when she gives him a final gaze that speaks more than the slight quiver of her bottom lip. A lip quiver of fear that usually keeps its distance with a woman of Jessa's character. She's tough, no doubt. But right now, any man would jump at the chance to be her golden pair of studs. And Marlon's talking custom-made and ready for AstroTurf grass. A little closer, I don't bite. Jessa thinks he does. There's a hunger behind Charlton's eyes, even with silver shades on. But it magically melts them right off and reveals his sclera and iris. It's how he starts to rub his palms together, like he's imagining running his hands all over her body with hot oil. Daniel licks his lips. But the heat has every man licking his lips for hydration. Can you give me your account of what happened? Daniel asks her this. Charlton stops rubbing his hands, and Liam looks like a wet poodle with his sweaty armpits. Why are you asking me before any of these guys? It was you who left the room. These boys stayed. Is there pride in how he says that? Marlon can see that Tim hangs his head low, but lifts it when he finds the courage to again. Regret. They each reek of it. I didn't stay. Marlon makes that clear because he has nothing in the regret department. I left. Balls. He lets out those youthful balls. His teammates hide theirs as the silence gropes their air and makes them breathe smaller, more contained and forced. Marlon thinks that it's getting even hotter in here, because streaks of sweat are now running down him and every other player in the room. But Daniel and Charlton look perfectly cool. They fan themselves down, but they aren't sweating buckets like the rest. Make it quick, Jessa. It's getting really hot in here, isn't it? Charlton rubs his palms again, and Marlon can hear them against each other. That's how quiet it is when nobody speaks amidst the waterworks and gas. What did Liam see? Jessa changes the subject because of Liam's gawking at her, trying to get her to say what he wants her to say. All heads turn to Liam. That's a fair question. Charlton looks from Jessa to Liam. Liam, what did you see that night? Charlton spreads his legs apart cockily. The Portland FC manager is the one who's going to give the press conference about this inspection. It would be only right that you all hear what he saw. Liam surveys them all. He stops on Marlon, then on Jenna, and then looks to the spot where Eric last was. I saw Eric taken out of here. He was led away and taken home. That's a lie! Tim bursts out with no shriek or shake. He stands firm. The intimidation even reached Charlton and Daniel, who hadn't expected an outburst. But he directed this to Liam, who he had once admired as a top manager. How can you say that? There's a hum. It was very low, but Marlon heard it coming from the direction of Johnny. You know exactly what happened? A lie? Daniel speaks like he's addressing Tim, but says this to Liam. Are you lying, Liam? Liam's eyes look sullen now. He can barely look Daniel in the eye, let alone Tim, whose big chest is protruding to its full capacity, releasing plenty of oxygen that was being sucked from them all. When somebody like Tim, who had made it a crowning moment to claim his loyalty to a manager and club, it can be hurtful as hell to hear the disappointment and betrayal in his voice. Marlon and the rest hear it. Jessa heard it. And still, hears it like the others. If you ever want to be a man, Liam, then grow a beard and admit you saw Eric's stool shot in the freaking face. Jessa screams the last line, and Charlton moves to slap her quiet. But he is stopped by Liam, who holds his wrist in the air as he tries to bring his hand to her face with force. Charlton gives Liam a cold stare and lets go, retreating as he does. Daniel keeps his eye on him as Charlton takes a chilling step towards Jessa. Marlon wants to step in, but Tim nudges his sense back. Marlon looks to Robum, who seems unfazed by all of it. Anxious, but perhaps that's because he's starting to look like sweaty gym socks, which include his melting hair. All that hair wax had gone to waste. It's that sort of talk that we don't need. Charlton doesn't get up in her face. Do you all hear me? The room vibrates and almost creaks to life when he shouts. Charlton then elbows Jessa out the way and comes up to each of them, removing his shades and getting right into their eye space. There was no murder here. He says that to Marcus. What you saw was a figment of your imagination. He moves down to Johnny. Eric Stool wouldn't sell Portland FC to my client. He finishes that sentence with Johnny, then skips Marlon to go to Tim. It's not a lie. The club was in disarray, which some of you may not know, but I'm pretty sure that you see it. The decaying seats, the lack of space, the changing rooms. It was all in need of repair, fixed, but we think it should be knocked down completely. He refused to sell it to your client. Marlon says this, and Charlton tears his eyes from Tim but stays put. I was coming to you next, so hold on and let me finish with Tim here. He stares back into Tim's eyes. I think this big boy won't bite the bait. I just can't. Then you will leave the club. Daniel makes his way over and pulls out a contract. This is no longer valid, and I wouldn't bother suing. It's been taken through the proper channels without you having to be present. You can leave. Liam, how could you? Thump. That's the sound that causes the room to turn and see what happened. There are a couple more bashes to the stomach, causing Tim to heave over as Daniel unloads a few more into his face as he pulls on his hair to gain access to do so. When Tim tries to retaliate, Charlton stamps on his foot, then the other, and then Daniel makes Tim look his way and throws a fist into the side of his cheek with a crack that causes him to shake his knuckles afterwards. Bring him outside. Marlon knew that Daniel is stronger than he looks. Liam runs over to help bring Tim out. Johnny and Marcus, I want to make this quick. If you want to continue playing here at Portland FC, then I will need your word that nothing more will be said on Eric's stool. Marlon checks his pocket stealthily, and he kept this to himself. From Jessa, from Tim, from the two acquaintances, one who he had known and played alongside for 2 years and hardly spoke to, and two, Jessa, attractively nice, and he was certain that if they both come out of this as normal thinking people, he would want to take her to dinner, a lavish dinner at that. Marlon hasn't done that sort of thing in over a year, and would like to give it a hearty go. But what he had hid from them was his plan to record it all, and send it to Benjamin. His phone has a top-notch recorder on it, and can pick up vocal sounds and dialect accurately and clearly. Even with the interference and loudness of all the other sounds, he can still be sure that everything he caught would be up to scratch when he sends it to Benjamin. The red light is still on, meaning that it's still recording. Charlton is walking up and down, intimidating Johnny and Marcus, whose body are rocking with their hands on their sides, as they slowly inhale and struggle to exhale. It's hot. Real hot. Marlon knows that this must be part of the ploy. Make them so hot that they almost pass out. Marcus and Johnny truly contemplate what to do. It's an agonizing muteness for Marlon. It's worse than hearing a car screech its way from crashing into a tree and dealing with the airbag. The airbag won't come for any of them. It's over. But what can be done is justice. Marlon knows that it will never be the same. The last month was horrible. The sex, women, emptiness, and desire to distance himself from all the flakiness were linked to this. Other problems, too. But this was the seed in the apple. He was meant to go back to training next week, back into action. Maybe Charlton knows this, because he hears Charlton saying this to Marcus and Johnny, but gives Marlon a quick glance too. You boys have the new season starting soon. It would be a shame to leave Portland when so much investment is happening, complete with plans to expand. Unless you want to leave, then there is no problem and we can part ways nice and easily. Marlon knows that's a lie. This will never be nice and easy. He hopes that Johnny and Marcus understand that too. How can we trust you? How can we know that keeping quiet doesn't mean being stalked and hounded every day of our lives? Johnny's voice shifted in pitch. But he executed that confidently enough to state that he wasn't going to be pushed around. There will be no further intimidation on your careers and lives. Go back to your wives, wags, side women, strippers, brothels, whatever. Yes, Portland FC has a knack for the cheap and cheerful. You all live how you want, and play for Portland if you wish. But in order for me and Daniel to go away with a satisfied grunt, I need you to sign a document that will be evidence that you have my word. Daniel and Liam come back into the room. Daniel closes the door, and Liam walks to Jenna, whose presence might seem ignored, but isn't. This distracts Charlton onto her for a moment, but he returns back to Marcus and Johnny. So? Daniel now stands next to him. I'll sign. Robum comes to life in the room. Take a walk with Liam outside. Liam leaves, with Robum not far behind. Now you two? I'll sign. It's Marcus who says this, and Marlon wants to tell him no, but he's already being ushered out the door by Daniel, who closes it behind him. A big mistake. A big, big mistake. Marlon looks to Jessa, and she looks to him. He wants her to know that he's catching all this. But he feels Daniel's breath behind him, so he turns to look at pretty boy Johnny. He a good friend of yours? Charlton asks this, then spits on the floor. We work well on the pitch together. Johnny and Marcus do. Marlon has seen the magic they create together. I couldn't vouch for a better player. Well, he'll be getting his reward. Charlton doubles back on his heels enthusiastically, like this is a prime steak added to the meal. He now sees Jessa, Marlon, and Johnny in his view. You'll all be paid an extra $200,000 per month. Charlton makes a diving down movement with his fingers. Right into your accounts. Johnny turns to Marlon. He's looking for some help in what to do here. Marlon wants to say no, but both Daniel and Charlton have their eyes on him. Think for yourself, Johnny. Marlon here cares only for himself. Send the text. Send the text. Marcus has his hand in his pocket and is doing his best to text Benjamin to get the cops over here. It's a difficult maneuver to try and pull, but he knows his BlackBerry well. He knows how to navigate it without seeing. He just needs to know if the message of send help has come up. But Daniel is watching him hard now, not taking his eyes off him. Marlon acts normally and makes no sudden movements. He makes it seem like the hand in the pocket is a casual thing to do in a stressful situation. He puts on more appearance of stress. The act needed to remove any suspicion from Daniel. It works, as his eyes now flutter to Jessa, who seems to be picking up on what Marlon is doing. Marlon hears Johnny. I'm a Christian. Keeping quiet about something like this is against what I believe. Now it is, then? Charlton lets the boy confirm, then gives him a few more seconds. Then he checks his watch and looks at Jessa. Marlon is screaming to himself inside. Say no, I got this. I got a way to have some justice here. Because even if you sign with them and they pay you prettily each month, it will backfire. They will come after you when the police dig. Maybe not now, but down the line they will. Better to come clean about what you saw than hide in their bushes and suffer later. If only Marlon could vocalize this out loud. Poor Johnny. He's small in comparison to how he plays on that field. Nobody messes with him. Johnny gives Marlon one last glance, and Marlon gives the slightest wink he can. Johnny's eyes amplify, then return to normal. Like he absorbed that as a message to heed. He saw the gesture of trust. But Daniel missed it. Charlton missed it. But Jessa, she saw it. I won't do it. Religious reasons and all that. I'll take my chances on the transfer list. Final answer? Daniel says this for Charlton. Johnny only nods. I don't want the same treatment that you gave Tim. I'll just make my way out. Daniel and Charlton slowly look to each other. Marlon wonders if they'll let him leave so peacefully. He thinks he sees Daniel reaching into his pocket. He gets a second to check if the text went through. There's one bar. If Johnny can open the door, then maybe Marlon can level back to get another. He takes subtle steps back, then peeks in and sees the bars moving like sound waves. Johnny gives him a glance, and Marlon gestures and mouths for him to keep the door open for as long as he can, on his way out. Johnny nods, then walks to the door and leaves it open. Liam and Robum are outside discussing the contract. Johnny pretends to listen, standing right in the middle of it. Daniel puts his hand back out and gives Charlton a direct nod. Maybe Johnny is reconsidering? He says lowly to Charlton, so only he can hear. Jessa catches it, though. She also thinks that Daniel might have a gun on him. She sees Marcus taking steps back, fanning his t-shirt like the open door is helping with ventilation. Jessa doesn't miss his handiwork in his pocket. Isn't it my turn? How do you deal with a model who doesn't even play bloody football? Jessa knows this will work in taking their attention from the door. Johnny is now in the conversation with both Liam and Robum, the prick. And it means he can have time to text. The idea with you was to pay you off, give you a little more grated cheese on your bun-buns. A beautiful girl like you with a few more zeros in her account wouldn't harm you, right? How have you been enjoying your success over the past month? We had a bit of a hand in that, you might say. You guys come across as the mafia. Keep them talking. Marlon's text had gone through a few seconds ago. Benjamin texts back instantly, letting him know that they should be on their way, as he had them on speed dial. We aren't the mafia. We just get in the way of owners who don't want to sell their clubs. It's what we do. This was a little messier because Liam really screwed up. He drunkenly brought you guys into this and now you're paying the price. We don't want to do this. But we have no choice. Do you want the $500,000? What's my other option? Jessa knows that the money is tempting, but she understands it would be a payment dipped in dirty blood. We can't allow you to leave. Charlton then turns to Marlon. You either. You're both top toddy, shall we say, bigger than we anticipated with our help to keep you quiet. So, you did help out my career too? Marlon joins in. They should be here soon. Come on, keep talking. They should be here soon. We were going to have you win the Golden Boot, then come to you with a proposition. Shit changed. Charlton spreads those legs slightly out again. Gets a good stretch. I know you won't say yes. You're right, I won't. Marlon drags Jessa back to his side. We won't take the money. Daniel places his hand into his inside suit pocket and drags out a handgun, then taps it against his chest. Then we'll have to force the answer upon you. Police, don't move. In a split second, 3 cops manhandle Liam, Robum, and Johnny, slamming them into the wall with more aggression than savageness. The chaos makes it seem rough, but in truth, they just squash their faces against the walls. 5 other cops come into the room, tactically forcing Daniel and Charlton to raise their hands. Drop it, they say, and Daniel does just as he is told. The 2 are secured and then removed from the gray room, with 1 cop staying behind to speak with Marlon and Jessa. We'll have to take you both in for questioning as well. Are you Marlon? Yeah, Marlon Travis. Okay. And Benjamin mentioned something about having you evidence against them relating to the disappearance of Eric Stool. That's right. It will tie this all up. Jessa grips Marlon's hand, something she's never done before. She does it now, and he welcomes it with a squeeze, something that doesn't come naturally to him either. They look at each other, think about it, and then agree that they'll make a good-looking couple for the papers. Then they laugh, because they don't really care about all that nonsense. They just want to get their statements out of the way, and then get wasted.
This is an exclusive production of the Romance Fiction Club. We hope you had a good time listening. Please like and subscribe so that we can continue creating free content for you to enjoy. Check out our library for more exciting romance stories. Thank you and have a wonderful day. See you soon. Bye-bye.